live. And let me check on their Facebook, see if everything sounds good. Honestly, this, even though it's a little chalky, it's like a better setup than our dark abyss ones. All right, so mic is up. We'll look at the comments on my phone. Let me uh let me share it on everything. It says we're playing Smash. I never know how to get rid of that.
When is that ever gonna go?
I know. All right, so we got some 3 views. I have the comments right here. Let me pull up the Facebook. Oh, shoot, I forgot the. I hate hearing myself, guys. I'm sorry. We have 5 minutes till we start, so we're gonna go ahead and introduce our guest for today, guys. So I'm Isaac, Matt. We were gonna put certified losers or something on here,
Yeah,
because we
Bonafide.
Bon- because we're nothing. That's what we are. We're nothing.
Don't do that.
Nah, but so today we're gonna be talking about Watchmen, which is a pretty big book, and today
It's kind of big.
it's kind of big,
No, it's
and
huge.
and we have guests with us today. These are two of our pool members. They're really great pool members. We decided to invite them. So we have Gabriel and Amir. You
Hi.
guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so I'm Gabriel Torres. I'm an English teacher here at McAllen ISD. I'm actually really glad and honored that you guys invited me. I'm not gonna lie, at the beginning, I thought this was a ploy to sell me a Watchmen trade paperback book because Isaac literally just messaged me, "Do you like Watchmen?" And I was like, "I've seen the movie." And he was like, "I haven't read anything." He was like, "Oh, do you want to come to the podcast to talk about it?" And I was like, "Yes, I would love to." And then I expected the next thing to be, "Oh, good. Here's a trade paperback. It's $24.99, but don't worry. Since you're a pool member, you're gonna get your 10% off."
10%.
So there's a plug for the 10% off. You get 10% off trade paperbacks. Am I not mistaken?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but then Isaac was nice enough to say, "No, well, actually, I'll lend you a copy. You can read it on your own." I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'm good."
I was
I'm
like,
like, "Okay, it's not a ploy. They actually want me to."
yeah, and
Thank you.
and then we have Amir.
Hello, my name is Amir, as Isaac already said. I'm one of the co-hosts for Paperbacks and Soundtracks, the podcast that we put out every week on Thursday. We're on a break right now, but you can definitely go find the podcast on all major platforms where podcasts are found. I'm actually from New Jersey. I moved here in August. Shout out to all my Jersey family and friends. I moved here in August, and I needed a comic book shop. So, I was, pretty much just bouncing around going to all the different ones here in McAllen. And, I came here and I love the vibe in here. Everybody's, super positive. So I decided to start my pool list, even though I probably adjust my pool list like every other.
You still your pull list is pretty good, and
It's a
you
good list.
you have a good list, and you adjust it to like, or it's not. Let's not like, I'm gonna take away 10 titles and add a
Yeah.
brand new 10 set of titles.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, I'll take one out,
Right.
add another one.
Because it's like I got to make room for these hardcover,
Mm.
graphic novels, which I'll probably wind up getting this eventually now after this discussion.
Ploy after all. No, it's not.
It worked.
No, but
Yeah, so I'm happy to be here, man. I appreciate you guys
yeah,
inviting me.
thank you. Yeah. Honestly, it was like,
We didn't know if you guys were gonna do it or
well,
not.
honestly, I was like, if one
I'm
of
super happy that
yeah,
both of you said yes and
Yeah.
like we're able to make it.
because you guys were our first choices, like without a doubt. We were just like, hi man, he's another pool member of ours. He's like, my list is a bit much. He has a whole he has a whole short box
Yeah.
dedicated for him.
Yeah.
What short box?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just say there was married now. That time is long gone. There was a time.
No, yeah. What's it called? So, yeah, we're trying to figure out ways. So I the first idea I ever had about Watchmen. So I read it. Matt had recommended it. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read it. I read all of it, and I had my opinions. And it was one of those books where it just feels like it has to be discussed in a group because there's just so much that happens with it. And I've seen the movie too, but the last time I saw the movie was like in theaters,
Yeah.
and I was a kid, and my parents thought it was a superhero movie. Well, it is kind of,
How old were you? How old were you?
maybe like 10. I don't
Okay.
know.
I think the movie came out like in 2008.
Okay,
Yeah,
never
no,
mind.
yeah,
I was in 8th grade, so
Yeah.
7th or 8th grade. So I saw it, and obviously, I mean, there's
Bring
a
up the
lot.
age and maybe like, can we start with the book?
Oh yeah, well before So just so you guys know, disclaimer: this
Yeah,
book
big
does
disclaimer.
have a lot of adult themes.
Yeah, there's a
But,
lot of mature topics that will be brought up in this podcast, which is yeah, we've done it before in some other what's it called episodes, but this time we do have to get into the discussions a little bit more deeply. So little just viewer discretion advised
Yeah.
and everything.
Outdated ideas that are now
Yeah,
not considered well.
for sure.
What else? Sexual abuse stuff.
yeah,
like
there's
that.
Put the
it's
kids to bed.
Yeah.
yeah.
Tristan, I know you're watching.
18 plus only.
Tristan says, "Hey guys, ready to talk about the most infamous comics of all time, Watchmen." So Tristan is a full member in our What's the Go store. How old are you, Tristan? 15, 16? He's in high school and
Just
he has
give a like and get off.
no.
To be fair, that's around the age I read it when I
Wow,
was
okay.
yeah, I read it when I was young.
During that time, was it like for example in GameStop or any store they're like, oh, you can't buy this, it's rated M, you need parent permission. Would they tell you anything if you went to the store and buy this at that time?
I think I bought it at Myth and they didn't care.
Oh, okay.
They didn't care, man.
Tristan says he's 17.
And we're not throwing anybody under the bus here or anything. I'm just saying, they didn't card me or anything.
This was 20 years ago, guys.
Yeah, it was a while back.
Outdated, like he mentioned. No, but Tristan says he's 17. So all right, that's good, Tristan. But he's in
Yeah.
high school and he's read like more stuff than me, probably. Like he reads a
Big
lot.
time comic reader.
Yeah, Tristan's a big time comic book reader. He's still in high school.
I'll be honest. I wish somebody would have introduced me to comics.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like
Same.
for me, growing up, I got introduced to comics by the cartoons.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like I watched the Spider-Man 90s cartoon and the
X-Men.
X-Men 90s
Mhm.
cartoon.
Yeah.
And that's like the gateway to comic books for me. And I started reading Spider-Man first. And from there, it just kept going and going. And my love for the media just grew
Mhm.
like abundantly. And now here I am working at a comic book store, and I couldn't be happier.
It's the dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
I barely started a year ago, and this how badly it got. I'm getting it here.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you just showed us some of your keys.
Yeah.
You're definitely already.
And you read this in literally.
Oh, yeah, I started at 10 at night. I went to sleep at 1:30 and woke up, had to run some errands, and then I spent 3 hours reading the last 300 pages.
That's so crazy. Like I
I'd
honestly,
like to know where it was when you went to sleep the first night, where you stopped. Like, you don't have to say it right
Yeah,
now
yeah.
because we're going to get into the book,
Right.
but when we get to a point where we can talk about that, I wonder what part did you sleep on? Because there's so much that happens in the book that when you sit on it, you don't know what happens. It's
Mhm.
like, man, this is tense.
Perfect. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
no, but yeah, so we invited you guys because we always have conversations here in the store. Whenever you guys come to pick up your
Yeah,
mail,
yeah.
it's always, and it's like with a lot of customers, we have conversations about books, movies, TV shows, literally everything.
Shout out to Amy Chambliss.
Yeah, there's a lot of great conversations that happen, but of course, when we're at work, we always have to refrain from talking so much because
Yeah,
we
too
gotta
much.
we gotta do a bunch of work. We are getting paid, so we gotta put used to that. But so which is why we made the podcast so we can what is it, communicate with everyone. And right now, anyone that's watching, feel free to comment. I'll read you all's comments out loud. Unless you put don't read out loud, please. But this is about Matt's face. No, but no, nothing. It's a beautiful face. But what's it called? So and then we thought, well, we have a lot of conversations with Gabriel. We have a lot of conversations with Amir. And Watchmen is a very conversation based
Yeah.
story, even if it's just a movie. The movie itself has a lot of like love and hate. It's basically, I mean, it's Zack
And I
Snyder.
feel Matt's glare, by the way.
Like Zack Snyder as a director.
Yeah.
I think he's a great director. Obviously, he's directed great movies. He's successful for a reason. Like he wasn't like inherited all this money that just
Right.
just started doing it like that. Like he has made a name for himself, and he did Watchmen, and it was basically the book itself kind of just, and I know this is what Matt probably thinks or does think.
How
Basically,
you guys are just speaking for me.
Matt, do not talk. No, but yeah, okay, you go ahead then.
No, you were just going this way.
The comic, or should we start about the movie? Because my first exposure was the movie.
I think
Your only exposure is the movie, right?
I think the best thing is kind of just go around and talk about first impressions for everybody.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's start.
Whether it's the movie or the book, you guys can, or both.
Come around.
I'll go first. I never read the comic. I actually just found out just earlier that it had floppies. I didn't even know. I always saw it in graphic novel
Uh,
form. But the movie, so this came out in 2009. So this was after Iron Man, I believe. So
Yeah, it was like a year because
yeah,
Iron Man came out in
so
08.
this
So
was
did The Dark Knight.
a big turn because I wasn't reading comics at the time either.
mhm.
So this was like a big turnaround for me to see go from Iron Man, where it was a little bit more colorful and funny,
Hopeful.
yeah, to and then going in to see Watchmen and not knowing anything about it, and it's just right off the bat, the comedian is getting like thrown out the window,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you see like the happy face with the blood splatter
Yeah.
on it. It kind of just made me feel like, all right, so this is gonna be a story about superheroes, but it's not the bubbly superheroes that we're
Mhm.
used to. Super dark to me when I first saw it, and very political.
Yeah.
You get was it Nixon in the beginning,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
speaking and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, so these characters are kind of like dark parodies of some of the major heroes that we've seen, like
Mhm.
Batman and Superman and stuff like that. So I guess my first impression was, damn, this is dark.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And you're actually not far off from the truth when it comes to where they sprung out from the characters
Mhm.
because originally the Alan Moore was given the characters from Charleston Comics that DC had just acquired, and that included characters like The Question and
Okay. Yeah.
Blue Beetle, lots of other characters. And his initial idea, he basically gave DC the pitch, which would become Watchmen, and they said, "This is too much. You're killing everybody that we just bought." So they were like, "Why don't you create your own characters?" Kind of spun off from that.
Yeah.
So when you look at The Question, he becomes Rorschach,
Very.
and Blue Beetle becomes Night Owl, and like
Mhm.
so on and so forth. There's a lot of characters that are directly reflected from the Charleston characters.
Mhm.
So it's pretty close to what you're saying
Yeah.
because it is essentially like this sort of funhouse mirror
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
reflection of superheroes
Yeah.
and everything.
Tristan, Rory says 300 on the next podcast? Question mark.
Oh,
What's there to talk about? The pecs?
Oh,
No.
maybe 400. Then Snyder also.
Yeah,
put
Yeah,
out.
well, yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, that's what he's trying.
yeah,
Justice
there's the
League
connection.
versus Superman. No, but
But Gabriel, Amir, have any of you heard of Doomsday Clock? It's basically a DC Watchmen crossover from 2017 and was a whole thing that happened a year after DC Rebirth.
Out of all of them, right, the first 6 issues, and then it just kept getting delayed.
That's what I heard.
And it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
12-issue mini that took like 2 years to come out. So,
who's the writer?
Jeff Johns.
yeah,
Jeff Johns.
Jeff
Okay.
Johns, yeah.
I think it was the artist Gary Frank.
Yeah,
His
Gary
art
Frank,
is
yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
detailed, so it took
Beautiful
forever.
art. Beautiful art. I
Yeah.
think he did the 3 Jokers too.
I think
Oh,
that was
Or maybe
Glenn
just
Fabbic.
maybe okay, maybe
Is it Glenn? It's something Fabbic.
Yeah.
Jason Fabbic. I think it's
Jason
Jason
Fabbic.
Fabbic.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But that story took too long for it to come out, and like I said, at that time I had short box pull list, so
Yeah, man.
so
Yeah.
I couldn't get back to it, but I do have them all. But they're back in Jersey. So.
Amen.
I have not read them, and I think I already mentioned it. I got this on Thursday, I think. Yesterday at 10. I read all the way to 1:30 in the morning. I stopped, I think, at the end of chapter 3.
hmm.
It really good pace,
Mhm.
really heavy stuff,
Yeah.
really heavy book. The reason I started so late, I was like, oh, it's comics, it's comic books. I've already have a good exposure to comics. Some of them go really quickly, some of them takes a little bit. But this one, each of them is packed. Each of them is
Yeah.
integral to the development of the story, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But I stopped at 1:30 and then woke up, did some errands, and then read for 3 hours, 300 pages,
That's
and I got out of the way. But it was my own fault for believing this was your regular comic book.
I warned
that,
him. I told him when he
yeah.
came in, he's like, I can read it in one night. I was like,
okay.
so. So I did read this in one night.
he did.
wow.
But because
My mind.
like, not to toot my own horn, but no, just kidding. You can only look at the pictures. No, just kidding. No, no. I mean, you being an English major, I was also an English major, and sometimes you had deadlines that you had to read certain books, and just get used to having to read.
or extended amount of
Yeah,
time.
and then like
quickly
and
while retaining the information.
yeah,
Yes.
and then you have to annotate it and all that stuff, and I didn't annotate my book at all, because I mean it's
We're older and like
for sure.
we've done it so long that it just comes second nature. Like that's what I was doing. I was
Yeah.
like, what's important? What's important? This is important. Ignore this. Ignore that.
Yeah.
It's not. But it was really hard to ignore because there's actually a lot of information that it builds up
For sure.
on each other.
Definitely, it is very informative. It's so it just feels like one of those books that does have to be annotated, and it's so cool that we have an annotated version of it
Yeah.
over there.
We should
Like
put that
I know a big hardcover of it.
Because it's really big.
Yeah, I don't want to cover you guys up, or I mean we can cover ourselves now, but what's it called? Oh, Roy says
Watchmen compared to the boys.
the boys.
Yeah,
They're
I
kind
was
of
gonna say, I
yeah.
think the Watchmen is what kind of
hmm
made those stories like The Boys happen.
Exactly.
Like other dark movies that we have,
Yeah.
like Logan, like those
Yeah,
those
yeah.
darker movies.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
Watchmen kind of got that part of it spun off, and it's weird that DC kind of didn't really, because this is part of DC, right?
Yeah.
Or- okay,
Technically,
Kinda,
like
right?
it's
Almost like
supposed
a
to be.
Vertigo type of situation.
Yeah, it was a Vertigo book as
Mhm.
far as I can remember. But what's it called? It was just its own isolated story and
Yeah.
everything. And it wasn't until recently the story that Tristan's talking about where they basically brought them together. They were separate universes, but they brought them together.
Yeah.
And
Is that like a
well,
sequel? So I never read Doomsday Clock either.
It's kind of sequel.
Is it a direct sequel? Does it feel like it?
well, it's a sequel.
Because how do you make a sequel out of this?
You don't.
Money.
Exactly.
Money.
It's not really. I wouldn't call it a sequel, but it has those characters. In it.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah, I guess maybe successor would be another
Yeah.
word because sequel implies like a direct connection.
Oh, do you have
But
it?
You
Yes.
wanna,
Oh, I like it.
anyone want to start the bid? No.
Claim.
Claims right now.
Gary
So,
Frank.
but I got a question for you, Matt. Since
Yeah.
you started out strictly with this, you read
Yeah,
this
yeah.
book, at a young age. You were saying like 16, 17.
Yeah, I was really young.
So by the time the movie came out, um, were you excited for the movie?
I was really excited. Like when I grew up, this was one of those like centerpiece books in like my brain. Like I read it in middle school, probably had no business reading it in middle school, but I was already like hooked on movies like RoboCop and stuff like that. Things were different. Like I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like kids get exposed to things nowadays because of the internet, and
Yeah.
it's just so unwieldy.
Yeah.
But back then, it was like everybody was supposed to be watching you like a hawk, that you weren't watching movies with violence and
Right.
nudity and
Yeah.
everything. But you still get away with it. Certain movies just had a weird appeal, and it was okay, like RoboCop and Terminator. People get like blown up and stuff.
Mhm.
So what's it called? With Watchmen, it was very much like I was saying, something that was a foundation of how I perceive comics and everything growing up. So I read that in middle school, and years later, when I was in high school, it was going to be my graduating year in '09.
Yeah.
And that's when the movie came out. And I was really, really excited because the trailers looked very
Promising?
faithful. Yeah, promising and very faithful. And I enjoyed 300, and I enjoyed Dawn of the Dead, his Dawn of the Dead remake that he had done, because I'm also a big horror. Like I love horror movies. So I love the original Dawn of the Dead, and then when he did the remake, I thought that one was pretty good too. So he hadn't made a bad movie yet.
Yeah.
You tell yourself, man, you buy your ticket, you're
Yeah.
excited,
Yeah.
life is good, you're gonna graduate high school, go watch the movie. What happens?
I hated it.
Yeah.
Which is so weird because like I was still just a teenager at that point. And one thing I will say about Watchmen is that it does have something that's very attractive to what do you call it, to a youthful sort of angry mindset, which is very much the kind of person I was, like very committed to my ideas and very what's the word, opinionated, which I still am in a sense, but not as angry. It's the teenager thing.
I actually
Angsty.
said because my first experience with Watchmen wasn't at the movies. I was still not into comic books. I found it streaming on a streaming platform. I can't remember which one, and I just clicked on it. and I completely loved the movie.
That's cool,
Complete
man.
every part. Wait, I'm gonna.
Oh,
I come.
He's like, don't interrupt me.
Questions.
now that you've read
So
the book,
I read the book, and it's a really balance. I think there's some things, and I can go into detail later once we start touching them. I think there's some things the movie actually does better than the comic book,
Mhm.
but there's some things that the comic does better. I think it was just he had to he had so much material. He really had to pick and choose and had to sacrifice some things. But then he made some changes that I just completely hated. So
yeah, yeah.
I finished reading it, and I was just watching the bits and pieces I remember the most out of the movie. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is way better. Oh, no, why did they do this? And we'll go into detail later. But like, as a general, love the movie at the beginning. I actually don't love it as much anymore. So like I'm like in good neutral ground. But I was like, I love the movie. I don't know why Matt doesn't like it. I was actually thinking of that when I was getting ready for
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And then I read the comic and I was like, I totally get it. I
Yeah.
totally get where Matt
Matt is
comes
gonna
from.
give you a cloak now. He's like, thank you.
Yeah.
You come to the dark side.
What about you, Isaac? You saw the
So
movie.
I saw the movie as a kid. It was like in eighth grade. My parents were like, "This is a superhero movie. Let's go watch it." And then it completely is a superhero movie, but it's like obviously there were so many themes and elements that I was too young that my little small brain could not comprehend. A lot of nudity, a lot of sexual, basically, um, blood, gore, all that stuff. Watching the movie, I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then in high school I saw it again because I think it was on Netflix or something. That was probably the streaming platform. I saw it again and I enjoyed it a little bit more because I started reading when I was in high school was when before Watchmen came out. So I was only reading Rorschach because the other ones I wasn't interested in. So I was reading before Rorschach or whatever it
The
was
great
called.
author Tom King.
Yeah, your favorite.
That's it. No, that's a
No, that's
different
Rorschach.
Rorschach.
That's
Okay,
Rorschach.
He's talking about the prequel
Yeah.
before
oh, okay, sorry.
And
Watchmen.
yeah, it came. It was well, it was they called it before Watchmen, and it was basically before Watchmen, the prequel to these characters, and they had
Yeah.
one for Watchmen, they had one for Doctor Manhattan. I think I read the first issues for all of them, and the only one I kept reading was Rorschach. And but because
Was it Alan Moore that wrote those too?
no, I don't remember who wrote it. Who was it?
They're all different writers.
Yeah.
Like I believe Brian Azzarello did Rorschach and what's it called? I know Straczynski. I think J. Michael Straczynski wrote. I think the Minutemen. And I know Darwin Cook did the art for that or wrote it.
Mm.
It was a long time ago, but like yeah, they grabbed many at the time like superstar writers and artists that were prevalent during that period, like early 2000s.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So when I was reading it, I love the whole like the way he narrates to himself. Like it's a detective story. And he's like, it's 3 p.m.
Batman.
Hey, whatever. And
Type noir.
I hadn't really saw the movie, so I had the idea of how Rorschach sounds because of the voice in the movie, and I thought it was really great. The way Rorschach's voice is in that movie is how I was reading this book, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the way,
what I like, right? Because we had already a voice in mind.
yeah, because I honestly don't have any idea how I would have interpreted, not watching the movie. So when I was reading the before Rorschach, that's how I read it. Like, oh, it's 3 p.m. These guys have no idea what's gonna. And it's like obviously my dialogue isn't as pristine as these comic book writers, but thank you.
That's pretty.
No, but so I enjoyed it. It was really cool. And then I never touched anything Watchmen until I started working here. And Matt is very open about the whole Alan Moore stuff. And I read Killing Joke. It was good. It wasn't like there's a lot of things that but obviously I'm not the pristine writer. So what do I know? But
no, you have your opinion.
but then I
Your
read
opinion
this.
matters.
Thank you. No, but I read this and I started off with one issue and I was like, you know what, I'll read half of it in one night. And I read it and I was like, no, I gotta keep reading. Let me just read one more. And then it just kept going and going. And then I was like, you know what? There's 2 issues left. I think I could just finish it. And then I read it and obviously I knew what was gonna happen because it's similar to the movie. Like obviously there's spoilers for both the book and the movie. It came out in 1980, so
You haven't read it.
if you haven't read it, nah. I mean, I hadn't read it, but I mean, until a few weeks ago. But
Like the movie covers the entire book.
Yeah, it goes through the whole thing.
Through the whole thing, which I think is how long is the movie? It's like
I
maybe
think
2 hours.
I think it's about
Yeah.
3 hours. If
Oh, is it that long?
about, I think it's like
Like
2 hours
250
40 minutes or
yeah,
Okay,
something.
240.
okay.
But it feels like it goes fast,
Yeah,
right?
it's
That's what I wanted to touch
yeah.
upon. Like,
Yeah,
it's a lot of material, so it has to be a long movie. I can't remember the timing well, but the pace is good.
Like you
Uh,
said, he has to cover a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of things couldn't get to.
yeah.
So I guess when I read this, like I started reading it, and this is what I told Matt. Matt was like, "Well, what'd you think?" And then I gave him my opinions and stuff. When I read it,
You seemed rattled
So,
when you
did
gave me your.
the movie change?
I mean, I never actually like loved it. It was just like obviously like Zack Snyder has this type of like style that he has. Like I don't know if you would call him an auteur. Is that how you pronounce it? Auteur?
Auteur?
Auteur. Because he has like a significant style of how he does his movies. But it's not my top five Zack Snyder movie. Number one, Batman v Superman. Just kidding. No, honestly, that movie was probably when I first saw it, I thought it was good. But we'll talk about that another time. But
That's a whole nother
that's a
episode.
whole nother episode.
We start like something that I want to touch upon. What was your favorite part about the Watchmen movie?
Mm,
Like, what was your best thing? Like for me, the main thing that I liked, I was love the interpretation of Rorschach.
yeah.
Yeah.
The way they interpret the character, very faithful to the source material, and I think it even improved it in the movie. I have like some quick examples. So you guys remember that scene where Rorschach gets cornered in the
Yeah,
at
yeah,
the house and he has to defend himself.
yeah, yeah.
So I was like really looking forward to that part in the comic because that's one of the scenes that I was always replaying on YouTube. I hated seeing it in the comic that when he goes out the window, if you remember the movie, he falls and he starts fighting back
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
he's showing aggressiveness. In the comic book, he actually trips on a trash can, falls on the ground, and they
just
all
wail
just
on him.
start wailing on him.
Oh wow!
And I was like, "What? No, why?"
It's just more realistic
Yeah,
because like the thing about Zack Snyder's movie is that like the characters are all like Power Rangers with the fight scenes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're super like adept at hand to hand
It's
combat.
eye candy, but I mean, there's instances in not this particular book, but in comics where I read and like the action is just like when I was reading Killer Be Killed, like it was just so many scenes where he's just like shooting. I'm like, oh heck yeah, like this book's interesting, shooting and shooting, and it's compelling. But I guess to some people like myself, and I guess like Gabriel,
Mhm.
seeing action sequences like that in movies and in books,
It's thrilling.
It's thrilling. It's eye candy, but so I mean, it would have been cool to see him fighting and going, but
No, those are the moments where I say, okay, the movie did a better job,
yeah,
right? Because I'm sure they did it because like it's not important to see him fight. By this point, he's established how incredible he is in fighting and defending himself.
yeah,
So it was just like I like that they added similar thing that scene where he says, "You're not stuck here with me."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
in the comic
Yeah.
book, you don't see him saying it. It's
Oh.
actually written as a
Yeah, the
little note from the
psychiatrist makes it.
psychiatrist where it's like, oh, as a note, he told the prisoners blah blah blah. But
yeah.
we don't actually see it in the comic book. Him staring at everybody.
That's a
It's
really
Yeah.
good.
menacing.
That's
Yeah.
a really good change because I remember that scene in the movie where because he's yelling it right, and
Yeah.
he's just like you're not stuck.
Like he looked at the entire prisoners.
Yeah.
Like he
Very scary.
yeah.
Yeah, and then when I read the book, I remember that scene with the psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist is basically talking to Rorschach and getting as much information as he can, for whatever reason, for research. Yeah, and he reads the one of his statements and it says there like, oh, he told the prisoners that I'm not stuck here with you, you're stuck with me. And I remember reading it in the book and it just left like because I remember the scene in the movie and it just left like a huge like oh man, that's intense. Like even though it wasn't said, but because it was written, like but obviously it's more intimidating.
To see it.
Yeah, because I feel like the only reason why it was intimidating in paper was because I imagined it in the movie. So I already had that like thought in my head where it's like, oh man, that's rough. And like, but because it was rough in the movie,
I was actually like when I saw that didn't happen, I was like, did the writers of the movie make that line up? That's a really strong line, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, they actually
here,
brought it
yeah,
from the source material. So Rorschach definitely my favorite aspect of the movie compared to the to the to Ever Trade Back. Also, another thing, the costumes are way better in the movie.
Oh,
I
man.
hate Owlman's costume in the Watchmen.
I love it. His belly and everything. He looks
well,
awesome.
I ain't seen pictures of
That
that's
face, entire face, and he has glasses.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, but we have to remember that like the comic is very devoted to sort of riffing on comic books, and Clark Kent just wears glasses with a little pearl.
Okay.
So there is a certain suspension of disbelief, only so far because Watchmen also puts a lot of emphasis on reality, like in realism.
Oh my god.
So
Who I like with Rorschach. I always pictured him as like this psycho version of Batman. Right? And then Doctor Manhattan, I looked at him as like Superman, but just like I was telling you guys earlier, just with all the powers, like he could do everything.
but without any like moral compass or anything.
Owlman and Silk Spectre, like I couldn't really get a grasp of who their characters would be parodies of.
Just something that I actually wanted to talk upon, but like I couldn't get there. You said, Rorschach as Batman, Doctor Manhattan as Superman. Did you guys see the comedian as the Joker?
Oh.
I did, but I want to see before I
see
start
what you-
saying why.
I can see why you would think that.
Why?
Because like the whole thing, well, a lot of like modern interpretations of Joker lean into the idea of him being like a hardcore sort of nihilist, somebody who kind of I do these things because there's no point and it doesn't matter and I might as well have fun. And in a sense, that's exactly what the comedian is. He's somebody who lives to sort of make a joke of the harshness of reality and the idea that nothing means anything. So it's just
It's
sad,
just that it would be
dark.
like if the Joker worked for the government.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
If
if
the
the
Joker
U.S.
was
government?
functional.
Yeah, like can you imagine if the U.S. government was like Joker? It's kind of like the Suicide Squad. You know how the Joker, I mean the Joker, the government has the Suicide Squad help them. Kind of like that, except their end goal for the Suicide Squad is like, oh, we'll set 10 years off your sentence or whatever it is. Whereas the comedian is more of like,
I'm free.
yeah, like they were like, oh yeah, do whatever you want. We don't care. Like
Yeah.
as long as you do what we want you
Yeah,
to.
like in the movie, is that violent in
There's a scene. There's a scene, and
he
it.
jumps out of that owl like
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and he starts shooting people. Yeah, that happens. So there's a scene, and I don't remember if it happens in the movie, but it's very horrible. And
You're
it's
talking about the Vietnam?
yeah, when they're in Vietnam.
That's exactly.
Yeah,
the-
he has
the
a.
book. Yeah, it happens in the movie.
I don't remember, but it's a scene where this Vietnamese lady's pregnant, and
Basically, the
It didn't-
Vietnam War just was won almost overnight because the American government decided to involve Dr. Manhattan, and Manhattan, his powers are almost limitless, and he can literally like just make things evaporate, explode, like take things apart with his head and everything. So it showed him growing to like an enormous size, just pointing at like tanks and stuff, and they were exploding, and people were running on fire, and it was just horrific. So with him being involved,
The worst part is what?
yeah, that's not even the worst part.
So the comedian is there, and they're having a drink, and the lady comes in, and basically it's implied that she's pregnant with his child, and he's like, get out of my face, because he's such a horrible person, and
Yep.
Dr. Manhattan is just watching it all, and then after I think she like hits him or something, right, with like a
Yeah,
with
she
like
breaks
a bottle,
and cuts his face.
and he gets mad and he kills her,
And
and
just shoots her.
yeah, and then
And
Dr.
she was
Manhattan,
pregnant.
and then obviously that shows um that shows the sorry, it's because I got a message.
Oh, Israel. He literally put, "Hey Matt, I like the movie over the book." I bet you haven't even read the book, Israel.
Okay, well, so basically, hey Israel. So basically, he kills the lady, and then Dr. Manhattan questions like, oh, like that woman was pregnant, and you shot her, and then obviously you're like, man, like comedian's so horrible. Why would he do such a thing? And then he questions Dr. Manhattan like, yeah, why did you do?
Can you put a pause on that? I would like to hear what you guys like about the movie because actually I want to touch upon what you're gonna go into.
Okay.
As one of the things that I hated about the movie.
Okay.
Can we continue with like what you guys liked about the movie? I don't know. I think I'm the only one that went.
For me, for the movie, I would say I 100% agree with what you're saying about what's his name, Jackie Earl Haley, the guy who played Rorschach. Yeah, the guy, like, of everybody in the movie, he nailed it. Like, his performance, like, he was super pumped to play the part. Once he heard the movie was being made, he actually sent in a audition tape to the studio, and he had his own, like, costume he put together himself just so he could try and pitch it to them because he was that wanting, like, he wanted to be Rorschach, like, this character really bad. So, yeah, you get that when you watch him, like, the face the completely like like I'm not here almost kind of face. It's just sad,
Yeah.
and all the way up to the final moments of the character and everything, like just riveting performance.
And it's so hard to act when your face is covered.
Yeah,
Right.
and he's able to
Yeah, his
project that
body
like
language is
body
amazing.
language.
Yeah.
And the other thing I loved about him is that they cast somebody accurate to the book who was short because he's
Yeah.
short in the book. They
Yeah.
give you his height. He's like 5'4".
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Oh wow.
And there's that
Yeah,
part when
yeah.
when he's in the line.
So big.
When
Yeah, I
they're
know.
beating him up, that's another thing I hated. Just like they were beating him up, it's like, oh, look at this guy. He has padded shoes to increase his height a
Yeah.
little bit. So what do? They actually take out his shoes in the comic.
Yeah, man. Like that's well, I want to get into Rorschach when we get more deeper into the book, but like just tossing it out there, growing up reading the book, he was my favorite character. For like I was talking about like the whole RoboCop and all that stuff I was talking about, he was my favorite character for his harsh, bleak outlook and belief in his sense of justice. He was very likable for that in this sort of young man way looking at this guy. It's like, man, he's a badass. You know what I mean? Like nothing's getting in his way. He won't like bend to it. But the older I got, the more I started looking back and reinterpreting the character and loving him. Yeah, loving him for different reasons and seeing him not like the idea of him being like this hardcore badass character slowly diminished and I saw the tragic, frail, sad person that he really was and that made me love him more. So still, he's my favorite for different reasons as I get older and older. So
I
very
think what's
much,
interesting about Rorschach is that he sees a lot of things in black and white.
yeah.
Like there's no gray area for him
Hmm.
sometimes. But there's sometimes his justice
Mhm.
is a little bit too harsh.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? It's like, all right, you might want to find a gray area. Hands out the justice, but other than the Rorschach, character line and every or the storyline in the movie, I did kind of enjoy the love story with Owlman and Silk Spectre. Like,
Hmm.
the two of them, like Silk Spectre, like she didn't really want to be a hero. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
that's
her
not
mom
her
pushed her
mom kind
into
of
it.
pushed her into that, and she didn't always see her like the purpose behind it for herself. And then Owlman like falling out of the love of it and seeing like that scene with the comedian going down and
Yeah,
going
yeah, yeah.
crazy, and then him looking around like what happened to us? You know what I'm saying? And then him falling out of love with being a hero, but then them finding each other and then going,
Reigniting that
yeah,
spirit.
yeah, to go and then save the day as superheroes do.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I kind of enjoyed that part of the
yeah.
movie. Thought that was really
And
cool.
they actually do that better in the movie than in the comic, in my
Oh,
opinion.
really? Okay.
Why? Because I love
It's the costume.
the at the end the costume. Like so at the end, this was actually one of my poems in the movie. And I'll just say this because like I really like more this in the movie than in the book. Like when Dr. Manhattan is about to kill Rorschach, right?
Mhm.
When that happens in the comic, when that is going on, Rorschach is alone. Like in the movie, like Owlman is there with him, right? And he like screams, "No, that doesn't happen in the comic." While that is going on, Silk Spectre and Owlman are having sex
Yeah.
inside the
Yep.
plane out of nowhere. Like to me, it felt like forced and Ramdam just trying to say they're gonna end up together.
I can understand that, but for me,
Just
I
know man
feel
is gonna counter
No,
any negative thing you guys say. Let them have their moment.
I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that that's a perfectly valid opinion.
Yeah, so
Like,
but anyway, it felt a lot forced and like I didn't like the way they developed their relationship in the comic as much as like in the
Yeah.
just because like of things like that. I was like, really? Well, they're about to kill this guy that is like your friend.
Honestly, I did think the same thing when I was reading it because they were going at it in like what, like a living room or something. I don't know, like somewhere secret, and I was like, that's a weird place to like. They're in the middle of like, you know,
he comes back, he just sees them, he smiles at them, and then walks
Like,
away.
good job, guys.
Yeah,
Like,
He
you go, man.
knows all this.
yeah, he's a yeah.
I don't
Honestly,
like Dr. Manhattan. I'll be honest with you.
Me
Well,
neither.
I could
he's a
understand.
very complex character.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
with that situation with the comedian killing that woman, the Vietnam woman. It's like you saw this happening already.
Yeah,
You could have easily stopped it, and you didn't.
yeah.
So,
That's
I
the
mean,
scene. Yeah, and it's
like,
insane.
He said that you could have turned the gun into like
Bubbles or
the
something.
bubbles and the bullet,
And he could have,
he didn't do any of
but
it.
because he's so yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah,
So
Like
I'm
how
gonna
he did Rorschach in the movie. Rorschach's trying to make a point, and he like snaps him
yeah,
outside.
yeah.
and
That's
he's like,
super funny. Not until I've had and he disappears and he's outside. My say. He's like, "Oh, crap."
So I'm gonna read some comments. So Eric Jason Acosta says it's hard to translate a story from comic to screen. Just take a look at Sin City.
Yeah. It is tough.
Speaking of Rorschach, have any of you heard about Tom King's Rorschach series from
Oh,
2020? I actually have never heard of this.
all right,
I
we're
think-
moving on, Tristan. Eric Jason Acosta says. Eric Jason Acosta says, I give movies like these a bit of slack and don't go too much into logic and use my imagination.
That's with any superhero, right?
For real.
Yeah, there is a
just
certain
feel-
degree of like you can't completely accept this as a real thing because it's so
I mean, it's
absurd.
in certain superhero movies, they make their points where it's like, all right, that's definitely something that they're trying to get out there. That needs to be a message that they want to deliver
Mhm.
for something that's going on in today's time, like in comics or in the movies.
Mhm.
But you definitely have to suspend a little bit. Of
For sure, like, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then another, Bill says, I was obsessed with Watchmen throughout high school and I watched the movie when it came out. Awesome. And then Mario, who's another pool member of ours, super into DC, loves DC more than anything. He says, I like Mime and Marionette from Doomsday Clock. Are those characters?
Yes.
I don't. Like I said, I only got a few.
I think they're
issues
probably like on one of the covers here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's two. Okay, yeah.
I could see where they're called Mime.
There you go.
And then Israel says, I have two. So when Matt criticized his inability to read Watchmen. Just kidding. And then Bill says, I did like how HBO series continues to what happens after the events in the comics. So we didn't really touch base on the show. I've never seen it.
After this, she want to see the show.
Yeah.
Now that I read the source material.
Now
I
an
really
HBO series. But I've never seen it, but I know I've heard it's really good.
It's very good actually. Oh yeah. I checked that out because I never read the graphic, but I did like the movie. So there was some interest there to check it out. It was good. It was really good. Like he said, it connects to the movie and some of the characters from the original graphic novel and the movie. Some of them have gotten older, and they're in the series as well. Maybe not the same exact person that played them, but
Yeah.
they aged them up. And there are some trippy things as well.
Is it very adult oriented, just like the book and the movie?
It's a continuation from this? Like,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, if it's on
that one
HBO,
definitely,
you know they're gonna make it.
Oh, yeah.
that one definitely connects. Definitely don't let any children.
Yeah, like I believe if they were gonna do something like this, it would have to be like an HBO.
Yeah.
That's what I was always hoping when before the movie had come out and before it had been announced. I had already like a firm understanding of the book from having read it a couple times and everything. So I was, how do I put it? Like I was able to appreciate the book before there was any spin-offs or prequels or movies or anything like that. It was just the landscape of just the book, which is so weird to look back on now because there's so much stuff now. So just having the book, I really didn't have any idea what to expect when the movie was being made, and my initial thoughts were this would be best as like a 12 episode like HBO series where they do it very dedicated to the comic.
Go deeper to the characters.
Yeah, of course that was before.
That was before streaming.
Yeah, and before
yeah.
these shows were really taking off. What's
Maybe
it
if
called?
we had just waited a little longer.
Yeah.
So I guess now we can talk about the book
No,
itself.
what did you like, Isaac?
About the
Did you tell us what
movie?
you liked
About the movie?
Yeah.
I don't know the soundtrack. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it did have a lot of great music because it was based around that time period.
Honestly, I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan is so good at playing such a bad person. Like, obviously Negan, Bruce Wayne's dad. No, I'm kidding. No, just kidding. No.
Isn't it weird how it was Negan and Maggie,
Oh yeah, and
That
Batman
was
versus Superman.
Batman's parents. It's like this is really weird.
But, like
That's
you see these characters in comic books, and then he portraying them, and it's like, yes,
Because
like
Yeah,
who
they
else
used to
could
do
do
that.
that?
yeah, because Jeffrey Dean Morgan has like he doesn't have a whole. I mean, I'm sure his IMDb list is insane, but like as far as like super duper notable things, he's mainly known for comedian and Negan, and
me,
obviously,
Negan.
and like both characters are just like these type of people that are like it just feels
Like
like
the whole world is smorgasbord.
like like if Jeffrey Dean Morgan was acting the way he's acting before this book came out, I feel like it would be written for someone like him. Like just like I feel like Negan was written for someone like Jeffrey Dean Morgan because he played that character super well. But he just has that sort of like cockiness to him where he's just like I could do whatever I want, kill whoever I want, sleep with whoever I want, and like that's it. And you guys can't do anything about it. Yeah, and it's the same thing with
I will
Negan.
shoot a president.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
According to this, he kills Lincoln.
yeah.
Lincoln?
Oh, JFK.
Man,
Dr. Mahan
Doc-
probably transported
I need
him.
to send me back in time
It
to kill
probably,
Lincoln.
but no, yeah. So it's very political. But yeah, I mean, I would say the actors. I love Patrick Wilson. I love him as an actor. Phantom of the Opera, obviously the Insidious and Conjuring movies. Aquaman, I love this role as Ocean.
Ocean
Yeah,
Master, yeah.
like I think he's a very great actor. And then of course, yeah, I mean Rorschach. You guys already kind of touched on that. Same thing, Freddy Krueger, the best Freddy Krueger version. No, I'm kidding, but yeah, like honestly, just the acting was very on point. Zack Snyder did a really good job pick and choosing who he was gonna cast, and I think if you were gonna have characters like that are very strong characters, you need very strong actors, and I think yeah,
They did
yeah,
a pretty good job of getting everybody for the movie.
yeah, because I love movies. I love movies so much, and I love the actors that and actresses that play these roles, and as a kid, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who these people were, and then growing up, you realize that they're doing a really great job. And then reading the book now, seeing how it's referenced in the movies, I now realize that these like I can't imagine anyone else playing these characters. Like I can't imagine you reading the comedian's role. Like I imagine it as Jeffrey Dean. Reading the what's his name,
Night Owl.
Night Owl, sorry, Owl City. I imagine Patrick Wilson. Even though he looks a lot older in this book than
Yeah.
Patrick Wilson, because Patrick Wilson obviously is older now, but he still has that young
Young features.
physique. Yeah, and like in this book, he looks like a little like old man, like Bruce Wayne when Batman Beyond was around. Like that's how he looks. Obviously not with the cane or anything, but yeah. But I mean that's just who I imagine, and I wish I was in Matt's boat where I read the book before the movie came out because I feel like my opinions would have been so much different. Um,
It's hard to imagine. Like,
yeah,
I've had that kind of experience before. Like, what you call it? I saw the movie, of course, of The Godfather before I read the book, and the book is super similar to the point that it's almost like a screenplay, how it's almost the same exact thing. But my experience with the film, like, super informed the way I read the book, as in like I couldn't help but see Marlon Brando as what's it called, Don Corleone, and like what's his name,
Al Pacino?
Al Pacino, of course, and
just kidding. That was my bad impression. I'm
What's
sorry.
incredible. Go farther in that tangent, but like Godfather is actually one of the few that I read the book first and then I saw the movie.
oh well, there you go.
Yeah, and the movies are way better. Even like 2 and 3 are not part of the
Yeah,
original book. Two and
yeah.
three
The second
actually,
one and the third one as well, written by Mario Puzo, the guy
yeah,
who wrote the book.
because like the original book ends with like Michael, he becomes a wealthy business owner, and that's how they end it.
So,
Yeah.
So he gets his turn. But anyway, that's
so
another
I know we've been
tangent.
talking about the movie. I would say Amir, you're the only one that's seen the series, right?
Yes.
So Eric Acosta has a very descriptive thing, and you've seen them both, so I feel like you would be the person to touch base on this. So he says the HBO series makes Dr. Manhattan almost as God in the sense that he is all knowing, while the movie makes him seem like a man with infinite power and still learning. Then again, maybe the reason he does the things he does, like not stopping the comedian from murdering this woman, is because he is setting up the future to unite the world against them. You seeing both the show and the movie, would you agree that Dr. Manhattan has a different persona in the two?
Oh, definitely. Especially being that it's
Sorry.
like this one is, they go forward from this point.
Mhm.
So yeah, he learned. You know what I'm saying? He learned more from this experience. And so yeah, he's definitely more godlike
So
for
can a
sure.
god like learn? Like since he is
I mean,
The thing is that
he
he was once a man.
right.
That's the
yeah.
thing.
He was human first. So he still has those qualities and tendencies to like run away, like he did.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Even though I can find a way to stop this, I'm just not.
Yeah.
I think the character is different in the series. He's a little bit more evolved for sure. Yeah, it's a good series, man. It's like
It honestly it,
I don't
it
want to
sounds really
do
good.
too much
It was
spoilers, but
nominated for a bunch of stuff, wasn't
yeah,
it?
man.
Like
Yahya Abdul Mateen, who plays
yeah.
Dr. Manhattan, he won an Emmy for it, and Regina King
Yeah.
won an Emmy for her character as well. And
I
they're both
mean,
like pretty much the lead characters
yeah,
throughout the
they're
show.
really great actors and actresses. Like I
Yeah.
One thing is like I haven't seen like the whole show or anything. Um, my opinion of all of the everything surrounding the book, you guys know me. Like, for me, it's like it's
you
just the
guys
book.
know him. Just
It's
kidding.
like it's just the book. Like I don't consider this other stuff, but that doesn't mean these things have no merit, to me. Like, of course, I'm going to consider that everyone around me may enjoy them, and that's totally awesome. And one of the things that I did find out and like see certain scenes concerning was how they sort of reinvented Hooded Justice.
Justice, yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, man, they should have just not done this whole show and made a Hooded Justice show because that was so compelling.
That's a very important part of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
series, especially in the beginning of the series. Very important.
Yeah,
And
like
when
when
you
they
go back and
yeah,
watch the movie, he's in there, the character,
yeah,
but he doesn't speak much. I think he just has the one scene
where he's
where
stomping
yeah,
comedian. Yeah,
he stops that part, he whoops his ass actually.
yeah.
But that's pretty much it. So for them to pull that character out and put some focus on him was pretty
So
deep.
Hooded Justice is the guy that has the hood
Yeah,
dressed
he's
up
got
as like an executioner type looking
right.
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they dive into his character a lot more. And I was gonna ask, like, the original Watchmen that they show in the movie, do they go into any of that?
Like
Like,
the Minutemen?
yeah,
Yeah,
the Minutemen,
yeah,
yeah.
because in the book they're referred to as the Minutemen, and then when the second group is put together, they're called the Crime Busters, and they never call anybody Watchmen, which is one
Yeah.
thing that's kind of funny in the movie because somebody says that they're like, "What happened to the Watchmen?" It's like,
Right.
who called them the Watchmen? Nobody called them the Watchmen.
Yeah.
Like when you see them first having their little get together when the comedian burns that sign and says everybody in the room is stupid, basically. That guy, what's his name? In he, Captain Metropolis. That's his
Yeah.
name. He's a funny character, and basically he says, "Welcome to the very first meeting of the Crime Busters," and it's
It's like
like,
the worst name possible.
yeah, it's like so generic and
Yeah.
funny. So yeah, like they didn't never called them the Watchmen in the book or anything. I think I just went on a separate tangent.
Yeah.
What were we getting at?
Oh well,
Oh, Hooded Justice.
yeah.
No, the Justice and they actually had
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in
the Minutemen.
yeah, did they go into that at all?
Yeah, like the Minutemen are explored in the in-betweens in the book because at the end of every issue is like a supplemental sort of like information that's like excerpts from a book or excerpts from
Which is the book the first Night Owl wrote.
yeah,
It's
because
supposed to be the
no, go ahead.
well, it's supposed to be the story is the first Night Owl retired and then he wrote a book and exposes a lot of the history of the what we know as the Minutemen, right?
Yeah.
And like at the end of certain chapters, it's like, oh, here's a reprint of the book from permission by the author. I did read the first two, so like so it's like it's incredible that the writers, not only the comic is already heavily loaded with text, and then they add 3 more pages of text where it's just text, absolutely no pictures, and it's
Yeah.
like
Almost like
all
that
parts.
Hickman stuff that he
You
does
know
with
I
the
need
X-Men.
pictures. No, but
Yeah.
what's it called? All right, so I guess now we can delve into the comic book a bit.
But one thing I did want to say really quick was concerning Hooded Justice in particular for the book is that uh it's really interesting what they did with them in the show because of it's like it's like the reverse Batman thing because Batman paints his eyes black and everything and puts the Batman mask on, but Hooded Justice has to project to people that he's white.
Yeah.
So he puts white here instead of like black that Batman would put or something like that. So he has to convince people that because nobody would accept what's it called if he was a superhero if he was black.
Right.
And these are all really interesting ideas and stuff that I find very fascinating. But when you read the book Watchmen, if you accept the stuff in the book, it's directly contradicts what he is in that show. And I don't know like if it was intentional because I honestly prefer what I saw in that show because I thought it was just moving.
Yeah,
it was a
gives-
moving
gives the
portrayal.
character a lot more.
You saw the TV
heart.
show?
I saw that part
Okay.
because what's it called? I was doing some research about something and it was like peripheral around it. But in the book, they refer to the character as no one ever found out who he really was. He was the one single person of the Minutemen, I believe, that never had his identity exposed. And it was during the time of HUAC, the House of Un-American Activities Committee, that was put into power
Yeah.
during the time of like the big Red Scare and all that stuff that was going on after the Second World War. And the result of that is like suspicions and people like talking about who was this guy. So the guy who writes the book, the first Night Owl, you read in his chapters, he discusses his own suspicions as well as things that he had overheard from Hooded Justice that 100% confirmed that he would be a white guy, and not just a white guy, but he was when World War II was happening, was openly in front of the other Minutemen approving of Hitler's methods of like the concentration camps and stuff like that. And it's hinted that he was possibly a ex like strongman, circus strongman with like German roots and all of that. And that he had left the what's it called, Germany after the war, or not after the war, but like before. So he had some ties and stuff that he was trying to get away from and stuff. So it was a whole thing, and it is very interesting in the book as well. But the way they spin it in the show, I guess for the intent of that show is it's better. Like
Yeah.
he's a more well, first of all, likable character because he's
And since you're going so much in depth for this, and I'm sorry because I interrupted you. I think it was like 20 minutes ago. Like what I wanted to say is like that's one thing that the movie suffered a lot from compared from the book. They couldn't grasp certain aspects of the characters. For example, that scene where you were talking about where the comedian shoots the Vietnam girl, which
Yeah.
is where I interrupted you.
It's okay.
Yeah, what I hate
It happens all the time with that. No, okay.
like the comedian tells him, Dr. Manhattan, I don't like you because you could have stopped it, right? You have this power to do what's right. You act like you care, but you really don't. In the comic book, and it's not translated into the movie, Rorschach has a huge amount of respect for the comedian. Like really respects him, and I don't think the movie does it justice because
I don't even think they talk about each other.
And he dislikes Silk Spectre, right?
He's well, the thing is, a lot of people would say Rorschach in the book more so than the movie. In the book, 100%, somebody could very much make the argument that he is a misogynist, a racist, like everything. But I think it's easier to categorize him as a misanthrope. He doesn't like anybody.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't.
he likes the comedian.
He likes the comedian not because he's a good person. He doesn't believe that. He likes the comedian for his commitment to his beliefs.
Yes,
and
exactly.
How what's it called? He refused to ever break under that
Like,
pressure
like, he
of
was
reality.
evil, the comedian was evil, but the comedian accepted it.
Yeah, yeah.
Rorschach is always against the hypocrites. It's like,
The
yeah,
phonies.
you know what I was doing is wrong, but you didn't stop it, right? It's like, and all these people, they act like they're doing something right and you don't stop it. Like, and like you were touching upon this earlier, is like how his justice is extreme. There are scenes here where he's just watching like teenagers tagging a building and he's like memorizing their faces so he can go later and punish them for doing that. And he actually talks about a period of time where he was the soft Rorschach. Soft Rorschach would only beat up the criminals. This new Rorschach learned he had to kill them, right?
Yeah, he says like that's before what's it called? I let them live.
Yeah,
That's how he would say it.
So he was more Batman then.
Yeah, he was more like
He was
regular
more
Batman. But big time, what's it called with Rorschach? It's weird because the way Rorschach sort of views the comedian is not too unlike the way Alan Moore sort of looked at Steve Ditko in a less
Okay.
horrible way, because Steve Ditko was a objectivist, and an objectivist like from the school of like Ayn Rand, books like The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged and all that stuff. And if you guys don't know what that means, it's like an objectivist is basically somebody who believes that if you like you should work for like get what you work for and it's yours. It's entitled to you, the sweat of your brow and all of that. And that how do I put this? That you shouldn't have to share it in a sense.
So he's rolling over in his grave right now.
So like Steve Ditko's characters very much are stemmed from that philosophy. Like the question is somebody who created by Steve Ditko, who 100% thinks in like uh what's it called, binary terms. There's good and there is evil, and he doesn't like the gray area like you were talking about earlier because it complicates things.
Yeah.
And that's only so far as the character goes, because Rorschach takes it to the next level. And
when like even when he's attacking Moloch, is that the name of the
Moloch?
yeah,
Yeah.
like he's like, oh, and like because like the first encounter, I didn't think he does three encounters with Moloch. In the movie he only does two. The first one he confronts him, and Moloch is like, no, I'm a good guy, I've
Yeah,
changed.
like
Second one is like, oh, you have a gun that you're not registered under. See, you're not a good guy. And like he leaves, I'll let you live, but next time I see you, you better have that gun registered under your name. Like it's that black and white, right? Like he hates hypocrites. The comedian, on the other hand, everything he did was 100%. He really believed it.
Yeah.
That's why I think Rorschach really liked the comedian.
He respected him for that
a
reason.
lot. Like
And
the one person that no one respected
was the
like,
one person that
the one person that Rorschach respected. I'm sorry, Isaac, that I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
That's the point I was trying to
I
make.
love hearing you guys.
Yeah, but like that's how I was saying. That's one thing that I hated of the movie, that like you weren't able to go much in depth with the characters, which is impossible in like 2 hours. They had to cut a lot of things. Also, we don't have their interaction. There's the newspaper man, the one that's
Yeah,
always
yeah, yeah.
reading the news. There's this character that we only see when there's like that big flash at the end. Uh, I don't know if you remember, like they hug each other.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you get to see their interaction throughout the entire comic.
Mhm.
They're two complete strangers that I think they just introduced themselves right before they die,
Yeah.
and like they just hug it out, and like they're there
Yeah,
together.
because it's a boy that always goes to his what do you call it? His newspaper stand to read comics and not pay for them. He just reads them at his stand, and the guy is super talkative and talks to him and stuff. And
He completely ignores him.
yeah. So it's funny, and they have a funny like
that pirate story.
yeah, that's the comic that the kid is
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah.
So like it's multi-layered like storytelling where you have supporting characters, tertiary characters, and then like symbolic characters, which would be like the comic that he's reading, these characters pirate story that we can get into that in a bit. But
Because
just to
the deaths hurt a lot more when
oh yeah,
when there's a death scene. By the way, which is something that completely changed in the
oh yeah,
comics. We can talk about that right now. Completely changed it. But we get to see the psychologist going through a divorce on his own, doing the Rorschach test on himself, and sees that he's more messed up than Rorschach himself. We get to see the lives of two random people, and they set all that up so when they die, it's like, okay, now that's actually
Impact.
means something.
yeah.
So
But just a real quick cap off on what I was mentioning about Alan Moore and Steve Ditko was that Alan Moore admired Steve Ditko not for his beliefs in objectivism, because he completely disagreed with objectivism, because in a sense it's a pretty it's a classist sort of racist kind of philosophy where you can only achieve everything like you think of and commit yourself to if you have the means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's easy for somebody who has like the wealth or the status to make these things happen and to be an objectivist. But for somebody who has to go through all of these like struggles that, other people don't have to, it's not the same. So it's very much not a good philosophy to subscribe to. But what's it called? Alan Moore admired Steve Ditko a lot for his willingness to commit himself to that belief and never compromise in that belief. So I feel like that's similar to the how Rorschach looks at the comedian, where he doesn't necessarily believe that, oh yeah, it's totally fine that he shot that Vietnamese woman that was pregnant. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure he would think that's like despicable, but he still would admire him for sticking to who he really is as a person, which is in a sense what Alan Moore did for Steve Ditko.
I think
So
Rorschach would have been in the comic. Rorschach would have been mad. Is like, what happened? You changed. Now you're taking care of this baby, right? Like you're being a good parent. It doesn't go with your personality.
All right, so Victoriano, who is another poll member of ours, says Watchmen and V for Vendetta movies really put comics on the map during that time again, or graphic novels, as he put in quotes. He put, I remember people using the term graphic novel more so during this time to really separate the story as being more well written or more established. It wasn't just a comic book, it's a graphic novel that just so happened to be a comic also. Um, what do you guys have to say about that? So Victoriano is also an English teacher, which is interesting. Yeah. So honestly, so working here at a comic shop,
A lot of English.
yeah,
majors.
it's definitely either art or English
Yeah,
majors where Matt has an art degree. I just found out today, and
I had it before I started working here.
it wasn't on your resume.
What's it called? Roy told me it's one of the reasons he hired me. I think was that I was actually like, hey, you're kind of overqualified. You have a degree, and I was like, okay, it's not like it's gonna help the story.
He's like, let's draw a picture for us. No, but so obviously, because a comic book is practically it is its own literature. It's heavily um influenced by old literature, all this other books that are written out. Um, so he's saying that the graphic novels uh phrase was used because people wanted to separate that from a comic book. What
Yeah,
do you
that
guys
I find
think?
that to be kind of upsetting.
there's actually it's I actually have a professor who was my master. She was the head of my master's committee when I was doing my MFA in creative writing.
Mm,
She was trying to bring graphic novels more to the forefront because there's always been a pushback against it by the old class of authors, because it's like authors wanted to be like, you can't put us in the same degree, like in the
yeah.
same like class as these cartoonists, right? Like, so yeah, that's actually very true. There's always been that pushback, but I think now as time is going on, it is becoming now our new novel. This could have been a novel, by the way.
Yeah.
Like that, just because of the amount. There were some comic panels that are just packed with writing, where it's more like writing than pictures. But yeah, there's that fight, and finally, I think graphic novels are getting its due. It's getting the recognition. Yeah. I think it's always deserved, but there's always been that pushback against.
Yeah.
What do you think, Amir?
Um, well, I can only speak for like my collection at least. Like reasons why I might have scaled back on getting certain floppies is because I'm starting to lean more towards the graphic novels and the omnibus and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
just, I don't know, especially like the older stuff. Those guys were really writing, like really writing. I think the first graphic novel I ever read was Dark Knight Returns, and Miller. Those pages were full of bubbles, man. Like bubbles everywhere. So yeah,
And he drew it too, so the whole thing was like his vision.
yeah. So yeah, like you said, I think they're getting what just due now, and they should. Those guys were putting in work, man, in some of these graphic novels for sure. And sitting here talking with you guys, I definitely am probably want to add this because there's things that it seems like there's like you can't do in the movie that'll probably hit a little bit harder on
Yeah.
the pages for sure. So
Well, Ozymandias was treated terrible in the movie adaptation. I think.
really?
I completely
I
agree.
was asking you guys who you didn't like from the movie.
I would
first.
say 100%. I would say Ozymandias, and I wasn't too big a fan of the actress who played the Silk Spectre. I thought she was a little too stiff, especially when it came to.
Go for it.
No,
Go for it.
no,
You-
no, go.
No, you
you
interrupt
us.
me. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go.
You go.
Oh, one interruption I do is 10 interruptions for me next time.
No,
Just
go.
kidding.
Go.
No, I was gonna only say that I feel the only reason why, not because of the acting, but the character, I guess this also answers your question. Who I didn't like was her in the movie, but also because so the book has so many things going for it that make it such a well established book. But I will say, I don't know. I've only read like two things by Alan Moore: Killing Joke and this. And I will say that he has a poor way of writing women. Like he does not write like for sure the men he's gonna go
Yes,
all
true.
out.
Very
But
true.
and then but like Silk Spectre, she's just sleeps with this guy and then sleeps with this other guy, and then the mom is like, you're gonna go out there, smoking her cigarettes, and it's just like, and it's like, and but all the men though, like Rorschach is
Have all
like,
this depth.
yeah, like there's so, and in the movie, it's the same thing. Like I would have hoped that the people making the movie would have been like, they didn't do a good job
No,
with Silk Spectre. How about we fix that for the movie? And then they're just like, no, let's just she's just on the side. And I don't know if you were referencing more of her acting, or just her character in
I
general.
meant her acting.
Okay,
'Cause,
well,
like,
yeah,
that's what like the same thing with the guy who played Ozymandias. He didn't project the same level of like class
hmm
and
I think I like him
confidence.
better in the.
before watching.
It's Jeremy Irons, right?
Yeah, I think you'll.
Yeah.
Even when I watch the series, I'm like, man, this version of him is way better than the movie. So I think you'll like going forward of that character when you see it.
That's cool.
But to piggyback off of what you were saying about Silk Spectre, it also could be because you said this came out in the '80s, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Their examples for female superheroes wasn't that like
for sure.
either. Like
Yeah.
Wonder Woman, and if you ever look into her origin of how Wonder Woman
Yeah, she
came
began
about,
as almost like as a fetish character.
right. So he probably didn't have much to go off of as far
Yeah,
as like building a character like Silk Spectre. Because today, that if he wrote that book today,
mhm,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Silk
It would be
Spectre,
poked at.
yeah, would be super badass today.
for sure.
Um,
Because there's also like, well, the Killing Joke, how they portrayed Barbara,
Barbara, yeah.
where it's like now, I mean, she's like they just make it seem like she's just some damsel in distress. They shoot her, she's traumatized. That's it. And like, who cares about her? Let's talk about Commissioner Gordon. Let's talk about Obviously, Batman's the
I
main
think that's
character,
why
but
in the animated movie they actually added a whole storyline for Batgirl to kind
yeah.
of give her some depth.
yeah.
And then they threw something they shouldn't have thrown in there. But
Yeah, they didn't do a good job. It's the same problem.
like, so maybe like
It's
the
like they
source
didn't handle her
material.
well in that either.
So
Like,
it's like, oh man, like you
to
would,
be honest though, like when it comes to like for Watchmen, I will 100% concede to that fact. I believe that uh there's essentially only like two major female characters in the book, which are both the Silk Spectres.
And her mother.
Yeah, so it's like the older one and the young one who's like the
And Rorschach's mother, who's a prostitute.
yeah, another
like
one,
there were
yeah.
there's like no
No
like
good female role models in
yeah, but then again, none
No,
of these characters are role models
yeah,
at
but
all. So
for
it's
sure,
just like what's it called? All of that can be is 100% true of Watchmen. I will say though, I don't have a problem with what happened in The Killing Joke, and I know a lot of people do, and I'm not saying that what's it called? Like that's totally acceptable for somebody to have that perspective of The Killing Joke. But for me, I feel like it's just an unfortunate reality that that's what happened. You know what I mean? And that's something that I feel like is getting lost in some of the way we perceive fiction. Like people tell Alan Moore up front, why do you use assault so frequently in your books? And he says it so like matter of factly, it's just like because it happens.
Yeah.
Then it's like, am I supposed to not have these things happen when organically in a storytelling way, when this situation is like created and it would happen? I'm supposed to not do it because it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's just that where it's like what happened in that story is just an unfortunate reality, and it is unfortunate because it was Batgirl, like a beloved character and everything. And I'm not saying it's a good thing; it's a bad thing that happened to her. But that's the point; it's all bad. You know what I mean? That was a bad story in the sense of bad things happening in it.
He does that in the comics by the interaction. Once again, really important. It wasn't there the interaction between the psychologist and Rorschach.
Mm.
Because psychologist represents those people that are like, let's look at a positive outlook of life. Let's focus on the good things. It's like, oh, you want to focus on the good things? Let me tell you the crap that I've seen. And then he starts realizing, you know what, the world is not really as happy as I thought it was.
And it sounds like that's what I mean. Alan Moore was going for. Like people were so used to Superman saving the day with a big smile on his face, and
Yeah.
being that or Captain America, being the all American guy and everything.
Hmm.
Like America is kind of crazy. There's some stuff in it
Yeah,
going
wearing a
on that
flag as a costume
And I
is
yeah,
and
can
I
be
think
considered problematic.
it's very beneficial that Alan Moore is not even from the U.S.
Yeah,
He's
he's looking at it.
yeah, like so it definitely because I remember thinking like for a guy that's not from the U.S. wasn't born here or anything, like he has a pretty good idea of what the U.S. kind of is. I mean to a certain extent, obviously, but corrupted and all that stuff. And I remember telling Matt from the beginning when I finished it was that when I read this book, I read it just as like a regular comic book. It sounded like a murder mystery because that's what it was. It starts off kind of like the movie Rorschach's trying to figure out who killed the comedian, and I'm like, cool, murder mystery. And then it ends up like leading into like politics, and then it ends up leading into like more in-depth meaning.
like an existential threat.
Yeah, and there's like more than just political stance, but it's more of like the what they have to say about the comic book industry in general. And there's like so much that you can get out of this book, and or you can just like so many different perspectives that one can read it from. And I was trying to read it just from as a comic book thing, detective story, but it ended up becoming a political thing, and it's weird because I was also a political science minor, and I was like, all right, cool. And then I was, there's that literature major in me that you have to like, what's the deeper meaning behind this story? What's the deeper meaning behind this dialogue? And then you start reading that part of it, and there's just so much. So I'm curious to you, Gabriel, when you read it, how were you reading it? Like, how did you interpret this book? Because you've read comic books
Yes, yes,
already,
yes, yes.
so you I don't know. I would assume you read it just as a comic book
Yeah.
story from A to B. Like, obviously, this is more than just A to B. It's
Yeah,
like,
so as when I was reading this, the first thing I realized is like definitely if someone is just starting into comic books, this is the last thing you should read. Like you really need
before your
to.
deathbed.
It
No, I'm
really
kidding.
reminds me of the way that I teach some of my students. Like I start them up with short stories, right? Before we hit a full on novel, right? I get their feet wet. This is similar. You really need to have first of all, you just can't go into it. This can be like this wouldn't be in the wall of like where
Yeah.
do you start
Why
with
do
your
we have it
comics?
there? No, I'm
Oh, we
kidding.
put it there just so
No,
people
You
can
know,
see
yeah, I
it.
just put it
No.
there.
It was there
here.
though.
It's like, oh, you read comics for a while. I think even like you have to be a certain age to fully
Yeah.
appreciate
Mhm.
everything that happens here, and because even like we read something right now, we won't get it until 2 or 3 years later. Like, how many of us have seen a TV show now and we actually laugh at a joke that we didn't get when
Yeah.
we watched
Yeah,
it 10 years
yeah,
ago?
Yeah,
definitely.
that's true.
I think this is a similar thing. You really need to you have to be of a certain age to understand this, and then just have the patience, which I think phones have taken away from us to actually sit down with a text.
About that earlier.
Yeah, actually sit down with a piece of text that is very heavy and just read it because that was my downfall in these past 2 days. I was like, it's a comic book. Like, I'll get through it quickly. I have experience going through graphic novels quickly. And then I was like, no, it was very detailed.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a chance to read the extra information at the end of the novels because I was like, oh no, I have a deadline. I have to be ready by 7 p.m.
I'm sorry I didn't tell
Yeah.
you sooner. To you as well, Amir. I didn't really. I didn't. It was like a last minute idea. Like it was just like, you know what, we should have some people talk because people have heard me and Matt talking, in these podcasts for a good while, and it's just I think it's refreshing for them to hear some new opinions.
I hope we weren't a letdown because in the post it was like two special guests.
Alan Moore and Dave Griffin.
Wow, you guys no, like honestly, like you guys are special. I mean, you have your degree and you're very knowledgeable in the literature sense, and you're going on 4 years with your podcast, so you have a familiarity, and it's dedicated to, as it is in the title, the paperbacks and stuff. Like you read, and you're very knowledgeable on your writers, on your artists. I do want to mention that he does have also special guests on his podcasts every now and then.
And it's not just guys who read comics.
It's guys who make them.
It's guys who make them.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, that's super awesome. Um, I think we're really fortunate enough to have you guys
Yeah.
here because you guys are.
Thank you guys for inviting me.
Yeah, no, like I get tired of hearing that all the time. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm sorry.
But I had a question, right? So you were saying that this book is something that you should probably read when you're a little older and you know you have some experiences and stuff, so you can get the you know what's going on in there. How many times have you read this now since you first got it, and does it hit you differently now?
Yes.
Yeah, honestly, I've read it a lot. I've
Mm-hmm.
read it a bunch of times, like as I get older and older. And the funniest thing is that I started rereading it for this podcast, and I didn't get to finish it because it was too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
As in, like, it got to the point where certain things were happening in the book, and I was like, I'm at the point in my life where there's so much
Yeah.
going on, and like I know the story.
You
I
know how
know,
real this is.
yeah, it's so real and like it's so bleak a lot of the time that it's pretty heavy, and I was just like, okay, you know, I know this. Like as far as I've gotten into my reread, I can pretty much quote this thing.
Yeah.
I've read it so many times, but it's so well put together, like written wise, art wise, that it's potent when you read it. Like it's
Matt,
got
as a 10-year-old, it didn't turn you off at all.
a
Reading
10.
it?
I wasn't
Yeah,
10.
he's
No, no,
only
no, wait,
16.
I
no
was
worries.
I
How
was
old were you
like
when you got it?
I was like 15 or
Like 15,
16.
sorry. Yeah, yeah, like at 15. It didn't put you off, like reading
No,
it?
because that's the thing that I was getting at was that there's a certain way you can appreciate things when you're young, and then there's when you appreciate them when you're older. When I was a kid, I was able to watch, and I keep bringing it up because it's the easiest example. It's like RoboCop, because RoboCop is a film that's hyper violent, like hyper, like kind of macho and stuff like that. As a kid, like as a young boy, that was super cool to me, just seeing him walk around, like there's like a cocaine factory full of bad guys and he's just killing
Yeah.
everybody, and I was like, cool, that's so cool. And that's as far as I enjoyed it as a kid, and it was exciting enough to enjoy. But the older and older I got, I watched it again and again, and it's like, okay, this is talking about a lot of things. It's talking about corporate America. It's talking about a guy essentially losing his soul to corporate America, reclaiming it by the end of the film. And there's even biblical references throughout the movie. It's a huge movie, and that's why it's like a Criterion. It's all of these other things. It's a one of the greatest American films ever made. And it wasn't even made by an American. But like it's a fantastic film, and it's the same thing with Watchmen. When I first read it as a kid, I got the surface level. That's why, like I was saying, like I read Rorschach and I was like, Rorschach's the coolest. You
Yeah.
know, he's punching these guys, he's sticking to his guns and all that stuff when it comes to his beliefs. He's super admirable for that. But the older and older I get, and like looking at him now, I see a guy who is sort of frightened by the scope and complexities of the world, and that the only way he can kind of allow himself to be a part of it is to break it down into simple binary reasons of good, evil, nothing in between. And that's why his mask is like that. It's
Changing.
always changing but never mixing. Like they stay separate, just like his belief. Because the moment he starts to believe that people are more complex than that, that there's what would you call it? Like that the gray area exists, he would crumble
Right.
at that moment, because then he would have to consider maybe my mom wasn't as like
Right.
horrible
I
as
guess do
I
some
think.
self-reflecting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing is that like what I was saying earlier about him being like a misanthrope, a guy who literally just hates people. He doesn't just hate people, he hates himself.
Mhm.
He hates Walter Kovacs, the man that he was, and that's why he keeps referring to him like I was soft back then. That's when I became Rorschach, and I wasn't Walter
Right,
Kovacs
like in the
anymore.
movie, he
Yeah,
keeps
yeah.
calling him his name.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like keep calling me that. Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
because he doesn't love himself either. He despises himself because he can't bear to look at his own reflection,
Mhm.
because he thinks the human race is just this like festering pool of filth and ugliness that he just can't look at. So he puts the mask on and chooses to live behind the mask for almost his
Considers that
entire
his
life.
face.
He
Yeah.
does,
Yeah.
because it's a face he can look at
Yeah.
and accept, because it's a face that represents his beliefs.
Once again, that correlation with Batman, where it's like he's no longer Bruce Wayne; he is Batman.
Bingo.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So Victoriano says, "Great points tonight. Shout outs to Gabe and Amir."
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
So speaking on Rorschach, I missed this comment. It was by Eric Jason Acosta, who was referencing the TV show. He put it's a great series, and I highly recommend that y'all watch it. Rorschach's legacy may not be what y'all would have wanted it to be.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I've never seen the show,
but I want
but
to see
I saw Amir's face, and he's just like, "Oh, forgot to mention that." I don't know what to expect.
Can't see it.
We'll
We'll see what
not
happens.
go any further into that.
But what gets me if it put you off, feel like if you were to give this to the average reader that is barely starting, especially with the current climate and everything very PC, and people would be
Oh, no,
really thrown off.
today's teenager, I don't. Well, not all of them.
Well, me working
But
with high schoolers, I don't think
know
I
if they
could
would.
just give them this. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
I
let's
can
get your feet
understand
wet
that.
with other things,
I
right?
think I would
I'm
give it
only
to a
like 4 years
teenager.
older than you, man. So times were different back then for sure. Uh, we didn't look at everything so PC like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it makes sense why you could read that.
Would you think that like stuff dark like this, like kids are reading that on the internet anyway? Like not necessarily
That's
Watchmen
a
or comic books, but like
man.
just
That's like a
things in
whole nother
general.
bag.
Like do you think that like from what they see on Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff, like do you think like reading this
Like
isn't so
Oh, they're
strong as
definitely
we?
more exposed to worse things than this.
Yeah,
But the
like
problem is, can they understand it,
Right.
right? Can they see? And that's why it's like I
This is a
once
little
we started.
deeper.
Because for
Yeah,
sure, like when I was in high school, and they would give us a bunch of stuff to read, literature, Beowulf, all this stuff. Like it's all like it's not for kids. It's definitely, but there's or like Huckleberry Finn and stuff like that. Like definitely they touch on a bunch of things that are outdated and things that are inappropriate. And as kids, you read it and you're like, oh, ha ha ha, like what the heck is this? But then they kind of take you into that sense where like, all right, well, you have to analyze what they mean in this page, what this means, understand the reference. I remember reading The Sun Also Rises,
yeah.
um, and basically it's was it by names on the top of
Ernest
my
Hemingway.
there, yeah, Hemingway. Um, and basically the story is about a man who was like in the war and his, I guess
And once
his,
again, the
it is,
only female character in
yeah,
this book sleeps with every other male
yeah,
character in this
and
book.
and basically this man
Once
is
again,
with this woman and his organs that are used for sexual, gets blown off and stuff. And but he loves the woman, and the woman's like, I don't know if I want to be
sorry,
with
real
you.
quick tangent. I was like, maybe a podcast about the treatment of female characters, but I was like, wait a minute, we're all guys.
No, yeah, we have no say. No.
we could do that. Yes, we have a female coworker. We could invite her to the show.
Yeah. We also have Dalila as well,
Yeah.
in Wasako. But what's it called? So basically she's like I don't know, she's like, "Oh, well, I love you, but also, you know, sex and all that stuff is very important in a relationship." And it's like,
Oh yeah, well, the context for that in The Sun Rises, which I completely love. I read the book a lot of times. The main character, I can't believe I forgot his name. He was injured in war, so he can't get erections.
yeah.
So he's in love with the main female character who's in love with him, but she's like, I can't be with you because we
Yeah.
we
But
can't have that.
reading that in high school, you're like, what the heck is this? Like what do I know about this? Like, I wasn't in war. I don't have any of these things to relate to. But of course, they kind of try to not necessarily make you more mature, but they have you read it in a mature sense where it's like, we're not talking about the sex, we're not talking about the war, we're talking about the people. And I feel like this book can possibly, but I mean, obviously, there's going to be kids that are going to read
That's
this.
actually the perfect example, and I'm glad you brought it back because I actually teach the Sun Also Rises to my high schoolers, right? Like I try to make them understand the importance of that because the way that I explain it is because also the female character pretty much castrates the male characters in the story, right? And he's like the physical personification. And I try to go into that detail where like she's this type of character, but my kids are so weird, like, he doesn't have a penis. He doesn't have a penis. And it's like, okay, you're completely missing the point.
For sure, and
So,
like
so
it can happen with this too. Like
yeah,
you see,
I think
Doctor
that could
Manhattan
happen.
is fully nude, and there's yeah,
It kind of goes to what Matt was saying earlier, like reading it on just the surface level.
Mhm.
When we're 16, it's like that's cool, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
You're like, man, look at this guy
That big
beat up
ass
all these
squid
people.
at the end. You know what I'm saying? So like that's what you're thinking when you're that age, but when you go back and read it,
For
over,
sure.
just so I guess the only thing you can hope for is that the kids will go back when
And read it
older
later.
and read it
I
again.
think it is important to sort of introduce them to these stories at a younger age because it allows them to become more worldly, like understand things like beyond simple terms, as well as it implants the idea to because like they're gonna want to go back to a lot of these things if they like it, and
Right.
you'll never know that unless you let them try. You know what I mean? And also, we have a tendency to underestimate kids
Yeah.
and like what's it called? I grew up reading a lot of what do you call it? The required reading, of course. And one of the books that was genuinely required reading, but I didn't wasn't supposed to read it, but I chose to read it was what's it called? The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it's one of my favorite books. And like looking back, I can still like think of it very, very fondly. And that was just because I wanted to read it and I stuck with it and it's still there like in my head everything's so vivid. And it's definitely one of those stories where it's like I don't know, you could really say the kid maybe not want to touch this because there's a lot of content in there that's just downright blasphemous in some ways. If you're like a religious person, there's a lot of things in there that's just like messed up and
Yeah, so like I completely agree with what you say, right? Like I really this should be something that we should read at a younger age to better appreciate later.
Mhm.
Right?
It's
But
like a
just
time
with the,
capsule.
yes, yes, but I just think right now with the youth, me working with the youth, it's you have to be really selective because there's some really open-minded kids.
Hmm.
But if you're not careful, you might give it to someone you put it in the wrong hands,
For
and
sure.
then
yeah.
the example is like something you also saw in the store, mouse, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to get that banned, and it talks about concentration camps, right?
Yeah.
In a good manner where like
Yeah,
people can absorb it.
Reference all the books. We have them here, guys. Kaboom Comics and McCann. No, okay.
There's a lot of great books on this wall over here.
Yeah, man.
10% off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Gabriel.
Very kind. Oh, I do it right, like trying to plug the
Yeah.
Good commercial break, guys. Great job.
like you need to come face to face that this is a reality
Mhm.
because instead of teaching Miles, they're trying to push the Diary of Anne Frank, which is like it touches upon it, but like so externally, right?
It
Like
talks about it in the sense that it's happening over there and it might happen to us,
yeah.
but
So like
that's like
you
you're
put
in
the
there.
barriers, but with mouse, it's like, look, this is real, and like you can digest it because it's mice and cats, right? You can digest it, and but like it really takes, in my experience, it's not every kid that would take this and be willing to finish reading it. Like the moment they start seeing the violence, the nudity, right? It's
All
like
the bubbles.
all
I
the
think most of the kids would be turned off like there's enough pictures in here.
Why do they have to have that accent?
I don't know. Where's the picture? You lied. You said this wasn't a
That's like an old man. That's nothing how a kid sounds. Like a 50-year-old man. Like, you just gave him a book. But
There you go.
For example, the sun of psoriasis, I only teach that with my AP kids,
for
which
sure.
they're supposed to be the most advanced levels, because we're talking about like so many mature things.
Yeah.
Something that I would never touch with like freshmen or sophomores. This would also, it's like my AP class are usually juniors and seniors.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
So with them, I
Get
usually
ready to get out
touch.
to the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one also, The Great Gatsby, with a lot of things that have evolved over time, and you really need to have a certain level of maturity to completely grasp just things like that.
Yeah, and
Especially,
that's what I got from reading this. Like, it just seems like the type of book that you would give someone at an AP class and stuff. You know, reading Knight and Frankenstein and all that stuff. Like, it's not. But I don't know because how do I say this? I don't know how to say it. But basically, I agree with you. You have to be careful with who you give this out to because you want to make sure that you're selective. But
I think it's also like sorry to interrupt.
it's okay. I'm gonna write down all the times.
No, no,
I'm kidding.
no,
I'm
it's
kidding.
okay.
It's
Go,
okay.
go.
I don't know what I'm
You
saying.
made me self-conscious. Go.
No, I'm the self-conscious one here.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm sorry, guys. A commercial break. No,
I'll
I'm kidding.
interject here. It's been on my mind since I said it. Damn squids at the end, like you go from like super like deep political and all that stuff. Like, do they like what are these squids supposed to represent in the book? Like, what is that?
And that doesn't happen in the movie. Let's make
Yeah, in the
different
movie.
variation, right?
Yeah,
That doesn't.
in the movie and the book have different. They have the same ending in a sense, but they have different means of arriving at the ending. In the book, it's that throughout the story they sort of pepper it in the background. You see like an
The
artist,
drawings.
yeah, drawings of like this artist is missing, writer's gone missing, all these different people, scientists and stuff. And the comedian, when you see, there's a scene where he talks to a certain character and he's having like a full-on breakdown because of something he witnessed,
Yeah.
and he's basically like drinking, he's like drunk, and he's saying stuff like, "I saw this
Venting and all
island,
that.
I saw this thing,
That's
I can't
another cool
believe it."
thing. Like shows you the loneliness of the comedian. That the only person he can talk to is like his
Yeah, his old
enemy.
enemy.
Right. That's what he talks to. He goes drunk there, and he's like pouring out his secrets to him, and like showing his most vulnerable side.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause, like I feel like kind of that would also be like the relationship between Batman and the Joker.
yeah,
Right. Like you're the person I spend the most time with.
It's
Right.
like Charles Xavier and Magneto.
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. Like
yeah. So what's it called?
But anyway, sorry that I
No,
caught.
no,
I
no.
think we lost our train of thought a
It
little
was the
bit, right?
squids.
But I think like at the end, like in the movie, and I think it's important for the people who haven't read the book or vice versa. In the movie, it ends with like it's supposed to be the replication of Doctor Manhattan's power that kills everybody, and now it's the whole world against Doctor Manhattan. In the book, is this squid arrives in New York, kills like 1 million people, and now everybody believes aliens exist and like there's gonna be an alien invasion.
Right.
So they have to unite and go against a possible alien threat.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is like how who decided to go
What kind
from
of
one
drugs
to
was
another?
Alan Moore taking
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that
well,
time
yeah,
of the book?
yeah. It's a lot crazier on the
Yeah.
comic book than in the
Yeah.
movie.
The
Like
funny
I've always
thing,
heard about that part in
yeah,
the book. I'm
a
like,
lot of people just say, "Oh man, the squid." You
yeah,
know,
like,
it's weird to some people, but like,
I have a
it's
theory,
I
real quick
actually
theory.
prefer the squid.
Yeah, I prefer the I actually prefer the movie. No, sorry. I prefer the movie.
That's fine.
The squeak, I feel like it comes out of nowhere. Like, I like it that they do something that I feel like has to be done, which is, they always say if there's a gun in the first act, it has to be used in the last one. Because I was always puzzled with like several things. Like there was a picture of a squid that was being drawn randomly. I'm like, why are they including that? And then like at the end, it makes sense with the squid. But I feel like they didn't do the squid idea also with the movie just because it's so bloody that aftermath.
Oh my god,
With the
man.
squid is like the people you see them there, they're still there, they're bleeding out, they're like corpses upon corpses. If you use Doctor Manhattan's power, it's like
Everybody's vaporized.
everybody's vaporized. You don't get to see the corpses. You
But
don't.
I think that removes the impact because that part that it's the very beginning of the 12th and final issue. It's pages, not one, not two,
Yeah.
but multiple
So you can
pages
see it. You can see
of
it like
the aftermath, and it doesn't pull any punches. It's literally like mountains of corpses, blood everywhere. It shows you.
even the cover is full of blood.
Yeah, like it doesn't, it's just showing you this is what happened. And it's like literally the aftermath of like a bomb. Like it's got real world like applications. Like when you see everybody vaporized in the film, it lacks impact because when they're standing there, they're standing just essentially in a crater. And they're like, it's already happened. But if you imagine the way it would have been, like if they showed up and all of that was there, it would have been like, okay, take me out of here.
Oop,
This is horrible.
That's actually exactly Silver Spectre's reaction.
Yeah, yeah.
She's like having a full meltdown because she's just seeing corpses upon corpses of people that have passed away. And then she's like, get me out of here, right? And then you really feel it in the comic book where it's like you're just looking at a chasm, right? You're not seeing like people actually losing their lives. Right?
Yeah.
But I just think like they did it to have let's not have a whole bunch of bodies. I think it was just better for the movie to just show a huge crater because it's literally they spend like a second in the crater. Like in the comic book, they actually spend a good amount of time reflecting on the death of people.
I think it's one of the biggest like problems in the movie because in the movie they show up and they talk briefly and it's like, wow, what's going on? And he's like, I sense this is like my own energy signature. I think it's already happened and I found him. Let's go. And I was just like, you don't feel the impact of what was done, and the book does so much to build up to that. And when it happens, it's just pages of witnessing this like freaking genocide. And it's like,
And what I just looked at, the color patterns that he chose,
yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it was acid. I've never done
No, it is very
I'm saying
psychedelic. A lot of yellow, a
yeah,
lot of stuff like that. And that's
pinks and yellows.
For a second, I thought you were talking about like acid is what was burning on their skin, and you're like, no, you're talking about Alan Moore.
it's freaky because in the book they describe it as a psychic wave that goes through everybody and kills everyone. So I can't imagine what they went through when they died and what happened. It's just it's like borderline like horrific. It's really crazy. And I prefer the squid over the idea of replicating the power of Dr. Manhattan because the by doing that, I feel like it's the reason why in the book I think they only dropped the squid because the thing is the squid isn't even really a thing. Like it's not a real living thing. It's not a real alien. If anybody's watching this is confused, like you guys keep saying like a squid, so does a squid just show up at New York and start killing everybody?
No, it's like the same blue light that appears in the movie, but like in the movie everything evaporates. In the comic book, they're teletransporting this huge squid on the city. And
Yeah.
it's the shock of that actually kills them, not that squid itself.
Yeah, basically.
Did I get it?
No, that's exactly what happened
Okay, perfect.
because
I was also trying to wrap my head around it when I was.
it's so crazy what happened. Like like I can understand being like, what? Like that's okay
And that's
because
the final book.
yeah, like the final issue begins with showing the whole thing happen, and the last issue ends showing it start. Like what's it called? Ozymandias is confronted at the very end, having been exposed as the architect behind all of this craziness from the very beginning. He's the one who killed the comedian. He's the one who engineered everything that was possible to send.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've been talking about a while.
Did he have the cancers?
Yeah, that's in
That too. That's
yeah,
another
that's
thing.
in the book, and all that stuff that was him.
Okay.
That was him doing it. And
Did you like the squid or did you like the Dr. Manhattan power?
Um, I don't remember the squid at all. Is that from the movie?
what?
No, that's
Oh, from the
It's
book.
book?
Oh,
How could you forget?
Dude,
I don't even.
It's right.
Oh, okay, yeah,
I do get
yeah.
that because
Because didn't they reciprocate? Didn't well, yeah, reciprocate Dr. Manhattan's power in the book as well? Like,
No.
isn't that how he was when they were in the
no, the only reason Ozymandias in the book replicates Dr. Manhattan's powers is an attempt to kill him.
Okay, but it
That's
doesn't work.
That's the
Okay,
only reason.
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I was
basically
getting confused. That's why I was like, so
And
what happens in
also-
the movie?
And also, I think that I don't think we've touched upon. He has the crazy power that he knows everything that's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Manhattan
That's
knows
what
the
I don't
future.
like.
I don't remember.
What-
Honestly, I don't remember the ending of the movie at all. Like,
I
what
actually
happened?
watched it to get ready. So
What happens in the end? Like, what is different?
Basically,
ending of
what's
the book
different
than
is
the
that
movie.
the world unites
against
under the under the impression that Dr. Manhattan caused all of these like shock waves to appear.
Or
across the
here, it
globe.
wasn't Dr. Man. It was the
Correct.
squid.
it was
Alien.
The squid, which was
Is that- I
it only
didn't-
appeared in New
Okay.
York.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
the thing
because
that I was
I
trying to get at.
remember them talking about the alien invasion and all that stuff. I just don't remember it being a squid. That's why I was like, oh, the squid's from the movie. But yeah, I remember them like the aliens or whatever it is. But
But totally understand because like when I actually had that's the only part that I actually had to reread and be like, squid? Why? Where did this come from? Like when did it mention? And then looking back at certain pages, I was like, oh, okay, now
It's
it
actually
makes
there.
sense.
Like when you like, if you ever want to reread the book, it's there.
Yeah.
Like it's there.
I'm sure now if
sprinkled
I
in.
reread it, like,
Yeah,
I'll
like
get it.
it's not, it doesn't feel out of left field as much when you read it again with the idea that this is being introduced like in the background. It's just like by the like second issue you see like the magazines of certain people that have gone missing, and then once you get to the point where that woman's doing that drawing and you just see the squid and you're like, what the hell is that? And then when you see that same like weird face, it's freaky because it came out of someone's imagination and everything, and everybody, all of these brilliant minds came together to create something that essentially was to save the world.
Yeah.
But all of them were, it was what they would call compartmentalization, where nobody knew that they were doing this.
Mhm.
And Ozymandias killed everybody involved so that he would be the only one who knew.
So pretty much they all unite in the movie against Dr. Manhattan. In the comic book, against an alien invasion.
Yeah,
Huge.
yeah,
To me, that's a huge difference.
yeah,
But like I see it, yeah, like but I see it more like okay, it's easier to put on film, less graphic,
for
right?
sure. Less CGI.
Also, one thing that I really hate about this is the ending. This is the very ending. The last words that Silver Spectre says is, "What did Doctor Manhattan used to say? It never ends. It never ends." I hate that because the one that says that in the comic book is Ozymandias. After all is said and done, has this moment, this lapse where he's like, "Did I do the correct thing?"
Yeah, because
Like
he's responsible for all
for
of those deaths.
deaths, and he's like, "Please tell me I did the correct thing. I did right." And like Dr. Manhattan just tell him, "It never ends." Cool.
Yeah, because he says,
Vanishes.
the way he words it is that like, please,
Yes.
he tells him like, did I do the right thing? Because if I hadn't had done it, everything would have ended. The world would have ended.
Mhm.
And then he says like, oh, it's okay. Nothing ever ends. And he leaves. And it's interesting because you know how he phases through things? In that room that they're talking in, there's this like large globe, and inside of it
This
is like a
galaxy.
miniature sun. It's a galaxy. It's our galaxy, and he's halfway inside it when he's talking to Ozymandias, and he says like the whole thing of like nothing ever ends. And when he vanishes, like the smoke of where he was is left behind, trapped in that globe, and it's at the center of the sun, and it gives you a visualization of a big bang. And he's essentially saying that the universe resets, that things happen over and over, and that leads into like I can understand why people would have problems trying to understand the character of Dr. Manhattan, because he's extremely difficult to understand. The idea of his perception of time is what makes it difficult, and the fact that if he could see in the future, why couldn't he just see that eventually these events would happen? And my interpretation of that was that he was what you would call sort of a determinist, somebody who believes in eternalism. And eternalism is basically a perception of time, that everything that's happened has already happened and will happen again and again and again. And if somebody was like a fourth dimensional being and was able to observe time, they could see it and like see all of these things happening over and over and over again. So he's powerless to resist to the will of that uh, what's it called, of eternalism in a sense. So he behaves according to what he believes is appropriate, is my understanding of the character. And that's why he doesn't try to step outside of it, because he's adhering to the way he says it to Silk Spectre is everybody are basically puppets with strings. The only difference is that I can see the strings. And it's like he's not saying that he's a puppeteer. He's saying that he is among them, that he is among the puppets, but that he is also powerless to it. He's just aware that they are being puppeteered.
I got a different interpretation, and I really do not want to go into deal with this. Just I'll try to really briefly. I do think it's a belief, an assault on the belief of a god. I also see it like that. I really feel like Dr. Manhattan, it's also like a representation of Jesus Christ. Right? You even see like there are panels where he walks over water,
Yeah, he literally
right?
dies and comes back.
And he dies and he has a rebirth, but also that knowledge that yes, I am all powerful, but I'm gonna let things flow. Like
Yeah,
there are
it's
a lot
like
of people. Is the writers atheists, religious?
what's it? I mean, Alan Moore.
Yeah, Alan Moore. What's their?
They
Do you know what the religious
he's
belief?
atheist,
Mhm.
but also like he it's so hard to explain because
See,
he's a strange person.
yeah,
Like
because
he is an atheist in the sense that he genuinely does not believe in God.
How about we ask him himself? Alan, hey
yeah,
Alan, you're welcome over here.
You
yeah.
can stop scrubbing the floor.
The
Call the mother and apologize. Look up and answer.
I'm a Catholic. He's an atheist and I get along really well with them and I love
Yeah.
talking to them. And like at least my friend that's atheist, she has the belief that like there's a huge belief that everything happens for a reason. There's already like the universe is already conspiring to let everything flow and everything happen.
So things are going to
Like
happen.
going. So I feel like that's the representation where it's like yes, I think that's what they were trying to say. Yes, God is all powerful, but He's not gonna do anything about it because He's gonna let things flow the way they are.
Yeah,
So
in a sense.
let's go back to that scene that we talked about several times, that allowing the comedian to kill the woman.
Mhm.
It was like, why should I stop you when it could have come from you to stop this?
So
Yeah, yeah.
that's so.
Yeah.
What I had got was like, you know how they compare Superman to Doctor Manhattan, all
Mhm.
that stuff. So I feel like Superman would be, um, like biblically like Jesus,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, same thing, But I feel like with Doctor Manhattan, he's more of like God than Jesus, because there's God and there's Jesus,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Nobody knows. Obviously, the only thing is like the question, like, oh, was God once a man or was he just God? Or is
Right, supposedly, like, he goes from man to God, right?
Yeah, and it's very like a
Biblical.
complex, like it's like religion's very complex, like the multiple religions, Catholicism and all these other things that are out there. Um, and it's very neat how these heroes or whatever you want to call them, Dr. Manhattan, like he's such a very complex character, like with his ideals and basically because he was a human and then he basically
Passed away,
yeah, and then comes back,
rebirth.
but
Yeah,
as
he got
a
caught in a deatomization chamber.
and obviously
So he
all
was
that
literally torn apart particle by particle.
yeah, and then all that like changed how he thought, what he saw, like everything was just different from him, and it's like such a complex like idea, like I don't know. He's complicated. He's a
Yeah,
very
but
complicated
yeah, I
character.
don't want to go into detail because religion is such a polarizing issue, right? It's
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
never talk about religion or talk about politics.
it's hard not to with
He talks
Watchmen.
about all of it.
Sure, he expresses some ideas, but I think Dr. Manhattan is just, to put it in simple terms, it's his own belief on what God is.
Right.
If there is a
100%
God,
point of
what
view.
God is, right? Once again, one of the reasons why careful with who you share with, because just like I have atheist friends, I have friends that are like super religious, where like I can't even touch certain subjects because then like they completely shut me out. So once again, right, really careful with who you share this with. It should definitely be read by as many people as possible. It's really good. It touches a lot of sensitive issues that a lot of people, especially now, are not willing to touch upon. So that's why we should be glad that this exists and we should share it as much as we can.
Yeah, I think that was like when we were talking earlier about like introducing it to younger people and everything. I think one of the things that's important to do for, especially nowadays, because of how exposed to things kids are with the internet and everything. Like kids are seeing stuff like executions on TV.
Right.
I'm sorry, on the internet. They'll see a video they have no business seeing, and they see the most horrific
I
stuff.
tried with I would hear from my kids, especially when ISIS was really active a couple
Yeah,
of
yeah.
years ago, and they were leaking those videos, and I was like, "What are you guys watching?" Stop
Yeah,
watching
like
that."
But you know
that
what?
stuff's just
Sometimes
out there.
it's not even with warning either.
Yeah, it just
Sometimes you
happens.
just be scrolling and it's just there.
Hmm.
Which is insane. But yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
So
But
I was gonna say that we have 14 minutes left, 13 now.
but I did want to mention the thing about the kids
Okay.
because it is important. Like at least I think so. The idea of this book does a fantastic job of properly framing violence in a way that makes you understand the significance and consequences of it. Like a kid won't see this and be like, what's it called? Man, I want to go and do something horrible like this or anything like that. They'll see it and either be repulsed or like me, just be like, that's cool in the sense that like, oh, Rorschach's beating up bad guys. But I have like, that's still framed within a right and wrong. Like I see him as a good guy
Right.
fighting bad guys, like a guy who was basically fed a little girl to dogs. You know what I mean?
But it's
And
also
he
like
did
with the
all that.
Joker. Sorry, I don't mean to.
No, no,
No, I
Uh,
say
the same thing with
interrupt away.
no, it's the same thing with the Joker. How people like fetishize that character. Like when the Joaquin Phoenix movie came
Yeah,
out,
yeah, it's a good.
everyone was
Yeah.
like, yeah, like he they deserve it, and people were like they glorify such a character that's so bad as a person, and like
And that movie didn't do a really good job of framing it. In a
yeah,
way.
and it's like so it's like one of those like you can show this a classroom the Joker obviously like maybe in college, um, and you're gonna have people that are like oh man that's so horrible like why would anyone have the right throughout everything why would anyone even do that and then you're gonna have people who are like well look at how the society treated him like he has every reason to be that way
and then
and it,
this has that good balance, right? Or
Yeah, I think a good way of looking at it is like if you were to introduce like Isaac was saying, if you showed a class of like teenagers or something like that, okay, here's the Walking Phoenix Joker movie, and here's like all of the excerpts of the comedian in Watchmen. Who do you think the kids are going to be like, man, I want to dress up as that guy for like Halloween or cosplay as that guy? Do you think any of them are actually going to want to be the comedian, or do you think they're going to want to be the Walking Phoenix Joker? Yeah, because one of them is like all tragic and like, oh, I'm a product of my situation and society, while the other is just doing what he pleases because he sees the world as a banquet and he's literally like just eating whatever he wants because it's like, who cares? You know, it's just a spinning ball of like dirt in the sky. It doesn't matter. So kids, that's not cool to kids. That requires a lot of thinking and it makes them like scared, I think. And I would think that the comedian is not anybody, not a character anybody wants to emulate or dress up as or anything.
Especially because like that careful balance once again, we get to see him at his weakest, right?
Yeah,
We get
yeah.
to see like everything
He's
that
a fully
that has
rounded out person.
So there's 10 minutes left. I do want to spend the last 10 minutes just hearing you guys discuss, your thoughts on the movie, on the show, on the book as a whole. Um, just everything you guys
get
have to
started.
say.
I said,
Also, if anyone has any questions or comments for any of us, feel free to comment.
Faces of death.
Yeah, I think when you guys were talking about
The stuff kids see.
no, when Eric he said basically it sounds like a Donnie Darko moment.
Oh yeah, the fourth dimensional
Yeah,
time and
Donnie
all that
Darko, I love that
crazy
movie.
stuff.
But I mean, how do I get you guys started? I just want what you guys.
As far as the movie goes, um, I think it gives a good balance to the superhero genre. I think
Mm.
that when that movie came in, like I mentioned earlier, like you had Iron Man where he's saving the day and eating a cheeseburger at the end, like Iron Man. I had this rough thing that happened, and then you turn around and you get this super dark. They're heroes as well, but it's like they're more grounded. You know what I'm saying? They're more human as far as like what they go through and what they deal with. So I think that was an awesome balance that we needed. And I hope we see more of. I think we've seen it like in the Batman
Oh
recently.
yeah.
And a few other, like I don't want to say Suicide Squad, but there's the Joker. There's been movies that have given us that balance to like Captain America: Civil War. You know what I'm saying? Where it's all this heroic stuff going on, and they don't really have to deal with too much of the deep stuff.
Mhm.
But I think that was a awesome uh, movie to throw into the mix to get us, looking at stuff from a different side of a hero.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's
And Marvel tried to do it as well with like Logan and stuff.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
definitely like I
yeah, for
mean
sure.
it's
Even
gotta
with like
have
WandaVision,
yeah.
her wanting to deal with, having a family,
Yeah.
and it carries on to like, spoilers, Doctor Strange. But it's like, yeah, those. It's cool to have be able to look at a superhero movie or comic book and be like, they're kind of holding the mirror up, and showing us what's really going on over here as well. But they're doing it in like putting the medicine in the applesauce type of way. So yeah, you guys sold me on the book for sure.
That's what this whole thing was about.
because you can buy it here.
Available at
We have
KaboomTube.
we have trade paperback, we have a hardcover, we have an annotated
I
one.
have my really old copy that's yellow.
What's interesting, I really want to know about the annotated one. Like I want to open it because like it's so big. I would assume that like the panels in the middle and then it's just a bunch of description on the sides. Like
to have a lot of information because it's so much multi-layered.
yeah.
And actually, that's one thing, man. The people, I'm sure when they told the people you need to write a script with that movie,
Mhm.
oh my god, the decisions they had to
I
make.
mean, I bet it was so
Yeah,
hard.
because
Like
like I still moving out like okay, Ozymandias. I hate that they took layers from him, but I get it. There's some speeches that Ozymandias has in the comic books that in the movie theater would just gone completely over everyone's head. Completely,
yeah.
like he gets into like these really thought processes
Mhm.
throughout it, and same thing for a lot of these characters. There was just so much layers. You had to sacrifice. We're telling you that relationship between the newspaper stand man and the kid that is there, the backstory of the psychologist, there's a backstory of a gay couple that appears there that I think it's not even touched upon in the movie.
No, they're not even
No,
there.
yeah, there's they also talk about the LGBT community. That's also something touched here in that book. As a side note,
It's interesting too because all of that stuff, all of these characters, they actually get introduced pretty early in the
yeah,
book. Like, uh, it's two women that get involved in an altercation near the end,
yeah,
and they're a gay couple. And one of the women, she works as a taxi driver. And early in the story, when the Silk Spectre leaves Dr. Manhattan, she takes off and gets picked up in a cab, and it's her that's driving her. Yeah, so there are characters that are,
connected.
yeah, everything is kind of
And then
connected.
newspaper Sandman, like Rorschach buys his he
Yeah,
buys his phone, right?
he buys the New
The
Frontiersman,
New
which is
Frontiers,
like a
something.
right wing kind of, what do you call it? Like Fox News type
So we have
thing.
5 more minutes, 2 questions. The, does Ozymandias have the speed of like super speed, or is that just in the movies? I'm asking both of
Oh,
them.
they
In the
did
book,
mention that in the
he
movie.
doesn't have like super speed, but he has like peak
Re-
human strength, physical like reflexes
and
and all that
reflexes. So
stuff.
it's just reflexes then.
It's a combination of his reflexes and him just being.
Because like I feel like in the movies like super speed, but no, it's super fast reflexes then, right?
Yeah, because even like in the movie, I'm sorry, in the book, it's super cool because there's a scene where he catches a bullet, is
Yeah.
what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring
And
to.
he catches the bullet in the book, and he goes literally in the text, it's hi
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, and he goes like that, and it's like a really cool drawing of like you see he must be moving very fast because it's like it's got like the shadow movement and everything, and like he falls like he was hit, but then you see he opens his hand and he caught it.
What do they do? But in the movie they do it twice. In the comic book, the first time they assault him, he grabs a candlestick or something like that and
Yeah,
deflects the
yeah.
bullet. Okay, my second question: why did Holly Mason have to die? Like the first Night Owl. Why
Oh,
did they kill him? Did they send to kill him or
no, that was just something that happened.
something random?
It's just random act of
Did
violence.
that happen in the movie? I can't remember.
Yeah, it does.
They killed the first Night Owl.
Yeah,
But it's cut out of the original theatrical cut. It's
Okay.
actually in the what do you call
Snyder
it?
cut?
The
Snyder cut.
but
Too
it's
many of those.
the
Well,
director's cut.
Well,
But I will
yes.
say there are two scenes, and this is me being a devotee of the comic book. There are two scenes in the movie that I actually think are done a little bit better in the movie than they are in the comic. And I think one of those scenes is the interview that sends Dr. Manhattan off into Mars.
Oh yeah.
When they interview him, I think that scene is done better in the movie because in you know in the comic, uh, he starts to react very humanly very quickly when he starts to realize that people are trying to put together that oh you're
happens too
irradiating people. It happens a little too
Right.
fast.
It's very uncharacteristic.
Yeah, and in the movie he makes that what do you call it, that implication himself. He's like, so you guys are implying that my contact with these people exposed them to radiation and therefore gave them cancer, and it's essentially my fault. And they're like, oh, that's what we are implying. And he's like, well, like he seems unaffected by it, and it's not until that he mentions Jenny Slater, his like ex-wife and everything. He's like, she has cancer, and he's like, Jenny, she has cancer, and then she shows up and takes off the wig and everything. That's all in the movie,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really well done.
Which is another thing about his power. Like he's not all knowing.
I think he knows as much as he wants to know sometimes.
Oh. He just knows whatever happens to him.
Sometimes, yeah.
I have a feeling that's his power to the future. Like he even says it like, "Well, you're about to, I didn't know you were sleeping with Night Owl, but you're about to tell me right now." That's how it's right? There's a scene. So
Yeah.
so he's like, I feel like he only knows his own future, his own past, whatever he's witnessed, and whatever he knows. But then again, it's like it's one. Do they go into the extra information on that on their powers?
There's a whole, like, I think it's right after the fourth issue. There's a whole like in between again. That's like a scientist discussing the mechanics of Dr. Manhattan's power and everything, which is like crazy.
All right.
So
Any
what
last things?
Gabriel, well, what did you think? What is your total your
The sun.
yeah, like
Watch the movie first, then read the graphic novel. I really think you should really that order. It'll help you navigate through the novel better just because you already have all that foundation.
Mhm.
and it'll help you navigate through.
I think it's similar, like how
I
when
could see that.
people that watch the Moon Knight show, they're like, "Oh, I want to read Moon Knight. Where do I start?" And it's always we always recommend the Jeff Lemire run. And like I saw the show first. I've never read anything from Moon Knight, and then I read the Lemire, and it was so good, and it's so easy to like you said, navigate through the book because you already have that you're familiar with the show. The same thing for like honestly anything like when you see like
Like
the
Wanted,
I've
Yeah,
never
very different.
yeah
very different.
Yeah,
But watch the movie; it's not bad. But there's a
that's
change.
what I've heard.
And that's actually something to do with my high school kids. Like, for example, going back to The Sun Also Rises, takes place in the 1920s in Paris. I talk about, all the people from the United States that left to Paris because of prohibition, right? Like, you have to set a foundation for them.
Mhm.
Here, the foundation being, the plot is half the story. Like, there's so
That's a good
much
point.
more
The
going on.
plot is half the story.
The plot is half the story, and it's not even the full plot in the movie.
All right.
So, already think, watch the movie, then read the graphic.
That's
But
good.
yeah, that's my final thought.
I like that.
Matt, did you like the book? Just kidding.
Oh,
Let me
I
see
do.
those pages again.
Yeah, they'll.
Let's see
I will
what
say
pages
one thing.
again.
I will say one thing for sure is like clearly this is like definitely one of my favorite books, and clearly like I still have this old copy and everything, so it's still something that I hold dear to me and everything. And if I ever got to meet like Alan Moore, I'd want him to sign my really old copy.
Yeah.
I don't even care
But I
about
think
like
he's a hermit, no? Like, who
he's
doesn't?
not so much a hermit. It's just he doesn't go to conventions or anything. You would just have to.
He's Rorschach.
You just have to knock on his door in Northampton and say, "Hey, can you sign this for me?"
You'll grab the comic book and like hit you in the throat with
Maybe.
it.
Like, after everything that's happened, man, he might. But what's it called?
Me.
It's like, oh god, this bruise. Take a picture. I need to preserve it. But
Get it tattooed.
like that being said, when I was rereading it recently, and I didn't get to finish it, like I said, but while I was rereading it, I was getting this strange feeling of like so many people, and somebody brought it up earlier, the boys. There's another comic from back, I think, the 1980s or 90s called Brat Pack, which is a sort of deconstruction of superhero sidekicks that's super dark and super violent and all that stuff. And ever since Watchmen, it has been like in style to sort of tell deconstructionist, dark superhero stories over and over and over again. And it's like going back and reading this was like going back and watching the original Halloween from 1979 or 77, I believe, and how that movie laid down the groundwork and the blueprint for slasher movies to come. Like, if you've seen all these other movies and you go back to it, it's like I've seen all these tricks. You know what I mean? Rereading it again, I was like, okay, I know exactly where this is going. It's the potency of the content that's making me feel like, oh, this is kind of heavy. Things are kind of dark right now in the world. I kind of don't want to deal with this. But also, I did feel like we're still having this conversation now, this discussion of superheroes. We should move on. And that's saying with love, with this book, I feel like we're too hung up on it. I feel like we really need to continue forward with this conversation of comic books, and like people are like DC won't let go of it. Like they like I was already when I was a kid and I had already read the book and they were doing before Watchmen the prequels. I was upset. I was like, you can't do that. They never made prequels to Hunchback. Why would they suddenly make prequels to Watchmen and stuff? And then they made
Like,
the
you
movie.
mean they need to explore other things?
Yeah,
Maybe
like
there's
we
more.
need to.
And like I feel that's what's happening right now with Batman, right? Batman, like almost every new DC comic, even the miniseries that comes out, it's all about Batman, right? Which I have nothing against it. I grab those. They're
Yeah,
my
he
tool,
does.
right? And they're good. But like,
But to your point, I mean, that kind of makes sense. That's why Alan Moore hasn't written anymore. Like that was it. Like this is
Yeah,
all I
he
needed
was
to
like
do.
Watchmen done, and
Yeah,
that was what he
let's
said. He
move
said
forward.
that like Watchmen was his a book that sort of was supposed to function almost as like a gravestone to the superhero genre, as in this is as far as we can push it. This is what happens if we apply them to our real lives, and we can see that it's absurd.
Yeah.
And we can now, with this book, acknowledge that and move on and start to discuss other things. But people were so drawn to the more superficial aspects of it of it being a dark and gritty superhero story that they decided to use those surface things to legitimize their other comics, being like, no, comics are old, like they're for adults. You know what I mean? So it's like it's just weird. Like we took the wrong lessons from the book basically and decided that's how
Let's
we.
push it further with
Yeah,
this.
it's like let's keep going with Watchmen. Let's keep going with making superheroes dark instead of. It's fine to keep publishing superhero stories and continue with superhero stories, but DC should have right now, if things were going like the way Alan Moore had probably wanted, would have a whole branch of diverse comic book stories and then their superhero comics on the side. But now, right now, it's exactly what he feared. It's all
That's why it's good.
superhero.
That's why it's good. We still have like Image.
Yeah,
you know,
Image,
like
they're the
yeah,
ones that are
independent
like
stuff.
progressing. Like
Yeah.
me and Amir talk a lot about Ed Brubaker, and like him and Sean Phillips put out some of the best comics. And there's stuff that you know took the right lessons from things like Watchmen that pushed the industry forward and took that baton and ran with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
While
doesn't have to be superhero based.
yeah, and like DC is like, no, no, baton is mine. No, stay away from me.
Capes,
It's like,
cows.
yeah, capes and cows and blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're just obsessed with it. So like that's my like sum of it is that yes, Watchmen is one of the best comic books of all time. One of my favorite comic books of all time. And I just wish we would all get over it. You know what I mean?
Do you
And I
think
say
Alan
that with
Moore
love.
gets a big fat check though every time they does he?
I hope so.
Or do you think
Alan Moore gets
do you think
nothing.
he rips it up?
He gets
He doesn't
nothing.
get 20%.
No, he gets nothing from Watchmen.
You
Nothing.
know,
That's a whole nother
because I take it from his
episode.
milk.
Oh man, that's like we could have a whole episode about that.
But like,
Yes, man. Finish and tie it all up, man.
guys, like,
I mean, I don't know. I just like to hear you guys. I keep getting interrupted. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
something
Uh,
should
No,
Yeah,
no.
wrap
This
this up.
honestly, this is not a book that I would probably ever read again. Like I think it's one of those books that like I would read it if it was like you know how in
leave it for a couple of years and then try it again.
maybe like it's like one of those books where it's like in school when they give you some required reading and you read it because you have to read it. This is how I read it. Like I read it because I wanted to read it. And then after finishing it, I was like, all right, well, it's definitely one of those books that like I would read it if like I was going to school and they were like, all right, here's your reading assignment, read it. And I'll be like, all right, and there's a bunch of books that were like that for me. And then there's a bunch of books that like I read it and I'm like, I have to read this again, for whatever reason. But because I wouldn't read it again and because I wouldn't read it unless it was required doesn't mean that I don't think it's a good book because I do think it's a good book. It does everything well, except for the woman part. But everything else like it's a very it's to me it's more than a comic book. I don't know if the word graphic novel would fit because I don't even know myself the true definition of what a graphic novel is. Because I think a lot of things can be a graphic novel. So I would consider this a book that is a comic, so a comic book, and it's
I
just
think people say graphic novel because they're scared of saying comic book.
maybe like they don't want to separate.
Again, yeah, I did a crappy job talking about that. There's that, and that's something. If she's a professor, she still teaches there, if I'm not mistaken. She's still trying to get people to view graphic novels as this is part of this should be treated the same as To Kill a Mockingbird, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They have to be in the same level, right? Because they're able to reach that same depth and touch the people the same way
Yeah.
a novel
Mhm.
can, which is a very, even to this point in age, a very revolutionary idea, especially with the people that still have the high spots in the realm of literary.
Yeah, because honestly, like comic books to me, I relate to them with in a literary sense, and of course, I mean, I'm reading it because I'm like, oh, cool, like Venom is beating up these guys or something. But then there's like more to like the character and the story and the plot and all that stuff, and obviously this book has a whole lot of that. But like I mean, I would recommend it if you want to read something that's more like out there. Like if you're tired of reading, Marvel or Batman or Spawn or something, and you want to read something that's a little more complicated and a little more complex within its characters, then obviously Watchmen's the thing to go to. Um, but yeah, I mean, maybe I'll read it again like in 5 years and see how I feel about it then. But I don't know. I never
For
actually.
now, you just put it on the side.
Yeah, like it's just I don't know. I read it and I was like, cool, like that. This is what it is. I can annotate it if I want. I can analyze it. I can write a thesis statement on it if I wanted to.
It's like one
And
of those things you actually have to read.
yeah, and it's like, and
Does it feel more like work?
no,
Yes.
because I was honestly so close to writing an essay on this book, and like I was like, well, why am I writing an essay? Like, who am I gonna give this to? Like, but like I wanted to because I had so much in my head that I felt like had to be mentioned,
And yet,
and
there's nothing here.
Yeah, where's your essay?
because honestly, I wanted to make this podcast because I wanted to have I feel like people have heard enough of what I have to say, or what we have to say. And I wanted, like I mentioned before, I wanted some fresh new opinions and fresh new ideas and stuff. So I mainly wanted to try this as a stepping stone into something new where we have, people, pool members. They don't have to be an English teacher or they don't have to be running podcasts. It can literally just be anyone. Um, because everyone has different opinions and different ideas. And I feel like people can already tell what Matt likes and what I like. And I mean, people are gonna get numb to that eventually. Like everyone's gonna know that I like Venom. Everyone's gonna know I like Donny Cates. Everyone's gonna know that Matt likes Alan Moore. Like they need to hear something else. And I've recommended Donny Cates to you, and Amir has a very large history of all this of writers and artists and stuff. So like um I just wanted to hear what you guys would have to say. So that was the main reason why I stepped away from talking because I wanted to just hear what you guys had to say because I'm very
I feel like a jerk for talking so
no,
much.
it's okay. But that's the main thing. Like you guys had a lot to say, and I appreciated everything you guys were saying, and I appreciate you guys even agreeing to do this because honestly, it's very chalky. Like I'm not gonna lie, like the camera angles they started moving out of nowhere, so we're kind of like
No.
crooked and everything. But it's fine. Like you guys are still in frame.
We're still in frame.
Yeah, we're
Everybody's
still.
a frame.
Yeah, it's just like the
And
angles
I
are
pull
off.
up my phone and check because I'm like, I want to be part of
No,
it.
it's okay.
I tried twice. I couldn't even unlock my phone. I was like, no, I need to know what's happening
No, I'm
here.
sorry,
Because
but
then they're gonna ask me something.
for sure,
Like,
for sure, I'm gonna fix this. Like I mentioned, this was a last minute thing yesterday.
once again.
I know. I mean,
I love this. I actually really love this.
I honestly, so me
I'm
and
glad you.
Okay.
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. The next podcast will be for another 2 weeks, like always. Me and Matt had the discussion of the vigilantes and stuff. I don't know if you guys would even want to be a part of that. I don't mean to ask you in front of everyone. I'd be like, yeah, just check y'all schedule. But
You know, I had
you're like, look in the camera and tell them what your answer is.
more than 4 days before the.
No, it's 2 weeks away. It's gonna
It's 2 weeks away. We need to make sure that's not around the same time.
yeah. There's Gamers Expo, so we got to make sure it's after. Oh, it's such a busy
Gamer Expo tickets.
gamers. Yeah, we have gamer. Thank you. You know what, Gabriel? Just take my job, Gabriel. No, yeah. I mean, we have Gamers Expo tickets. It's in 2 weeks. It's in June. What 17th, 18th? Is that Saturday, Sunday?
I believe it's the 18th, 19th.
18th and 19th.
Right next to you.
Oh yeah, it's right. There's like 5 of them right there. Yeah, 18th and 19th is Gamers Expo. It's basically a mini convention, a mini anime convention, a gaming tournament, multiple gaming tournaments, everything put into one. It's gonna be in the McAllen Convention Center. Kaboom's gonna be there, as well as Anime Boom, Kaboom Games. We're all gonna be there with the booth. The store is still gonna be open, so for those of you guys that are not able to make it, store's still gonna be up and running. We're still gonna have all our product here. Everything's gonna still be here. I will say this week after organizing the DC comics, it's gonna be a huge week for DC. Literally probably a wall and a half of just DC. Like I'm not even kidding. Like
Yeah.
normally DC is like 2 rows.
Is it Dark Crisis?
Dark Crisis,
Poison Ivy #1.
Poison Ivy #1, which I haven't been promoting unfortunately. DC Pride 2020, which by the way, Kevin Costner has written a story in there.
Kevin Conroy.
Oh, Kevin Costner. I was like,
He's like Kevin Costner.
Coster. Who's Kevin? Is there
Who's
even,
Kevin Costner?
is there a last name Coster out there?
Yeah, that's
Actor.
the actor, the Dances with Wolves.
Never even seen
Waterworld.
that movie. I've never seen
Oh
that
yeah,
movie.
that's the Waterworld.
All right, well, Kevin Conroy. Sorry.
Yeah,
Man of Steel?
Yeah. Oh, Kevin Costner. There you go. Okay, that actor. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy,
The
the
guy who voiced
voice, yeah, from the original animated series.
Jesus.
He wrote a story. He has our voice in our what do you call the store? Yeah, let me do it right now. No, what's it called? But yeah, DC Pride 2022. There's also we mentioned Poison Ivy, Dark Crisis, Dark Knights of Steel. There's a lot. There's a lot of books. There's so many incentives that
Highly
we've done
recommend
too.
Nights of Steel. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, it with DC. It would work, but it's beautiful.
They call it. So, and that's just the DC side. Like, I haven't even looked into what's coming out with everything else, but I think it's gonna be a big week for comics,
I'll be a
and
full member to be updated.
yeah, we didn't pay him to do this. No, like to promote us. No, but yeah, sign up for a poll. It's absolutely free. You get discounts on your new comics and trades. So if you guys do want to pick up this, it also works with omnibuses, which are really heavy books. I know Amir has bought a few, and
Ninja Turtles.
oh yeah, the big
On Friday.
big hardcover one. 10% off takes out a whole lot for big numbers like that.
Yeah, like some of them go up to like 125. That's like 1250.
Yeah,
Right off the top.
Barnes and Noble wouldn't do that. Yeah, and you get the rewards. Oh, man, you guys. Well, yeah, more than likely. But you should still go to Gamers Expo. Yeah, we're gonna have double coins. So basically every dollar you spend, you get a coin. For Gamers Expo, you get double coins. You know, you increase your
That's how
chance.
corner we are to this.
I know. You know,
Oh, we're gonna double points.
I honestly I appreciate it. Like there's you guys are very supportive of us. So I'm don't even regret inviting you guys here
Yeah,
at
this
all.
one's
Like
one of our best episodes.
I honestly think so.
Are people still sticking around, or is it just
Yeah, we got a few people still.
Yeah.
We should
Yeah.
cut it.
Victoriano mentioned Neil Gaiman. Like we should talk about Neil Gaiman.
I've never read anything from Neil
I
Gaiman.
actually have read some, and he's not my personal cup of tea, but I am willing to try some of his more popular books, like Sandman.
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah, definitely something I have to
So
read.
we would probably consider doing that for.
But for sure, there's so much out there, and the next topic we wanted to talk about was vigilantes, and you know how there's that mindset like the Punisher or in Kill or Be Killed, where you know people do bad, you kill them, and that's the best thing to do because you want to make sure they don't.
Is it justified?
Yeah, like is it basically, and it's such an ideal thing that people are like, oh well, you know, the Punisher
If
stands.
you ask Batman, it's
Yeah, there's characters like Batman and Daredevil and all that that feel like you can't do that, that you shouldn't be the judge and the executioner. When there's people that are like, well, if you don't do it, then they're gonna come back and do it again. So it's definitely a heavy subject.
hopefully get invited.
Yeah, I'll definitely message you guys again. And again, Amir has his podcast.
Paperbacks and Soundtracks, hosted by myself and my friend, my brother, Hey. He's back in Jersey. But yeah, we're on a break right now, but we keep an eye out for us. And you can definitely go subscribe and go check out the past episodes. We've got some really cool interviews on there. We've had Chuck Brown, we've had Rodney Barnes, who's writing Philadelphia right
Here.
now.
See, we got all the books here.
Yeah, awesome story. And we've had a lot of other like
Philadelphia.
independent writers that have been on the show, early on when I first started. So yeah, definitely go check us out. The podcast is everywhere where major podcasts are found, and yeah, keep us
Follow on my Instagram.
Instagram, TikTok, all that
TikTok,
stuff.
everything.
We do reviews on there, like quick ones. So yeah, but we'll be bringing something new very soon.
Yeah, super exciting. And Gabriel, well,
I'm
he is
just really passionate about comic books.
yeah, he's an
I love
English
to hear
teacher. He has a huge impact on his students, I'm sure, because it's always the English teachers that
Yeah.
that have the
You're able to
impact.
use literature too.
For sure, yeah, and then of course literature can be you know transferred through comics, movies, all TV shows. Like I mean, at least for me, that's how it
Yeah.
was. What's it called? I remember when we watched The Sun Also Rises, they also showed us the movie Chicago, and it was like such a weird like comparing
Yeah.
contrast thing because they're completely different. But
Why? Why did they?
just because I don't know, we're not gonna talk
Because
about
it
that.
took place in 1920s.
I don't think that's why. No,
I
there was
Chicago, so I can't make that.
Isn't it a
reference.
musical?
it's a musical, but basically the two female leads, who are both not good people,
Yeah.
are competing against
right.
each other for the starring role and all that. But basically the things they go through, that show why they're not good people. I guess it was a comparison of
To
like,
Brett,
I guess
the
so,
way he
yeah.
treats the man in the novel.
I guess so. And then it was such an off-putting like compare and contrast because you would, I don't know, you expect it to be the same, but it's not. But there was the similarities.
I use episodes from The Simpsons and Rick and Morty.
Oh, man, The
Yeah.
Simpsons. That's what they used on
And some
for
Family Guys too. They nailed it in some places.
Oh man. There's also a Simpsons clip that Matt showed me where Alan Moore comes out
Have you seen that?
and he does the
Alan
voice.
Moore.
We
Yes,
should
yeah,
show it to
there
the
was
we should
also
show
a
it to
convention.
the
They're at a
yeah
convention, right?
What about it?
yeah
Oh, yeah,
yeah
yeah. It takes place during a comic convention.
yeah. We'll show you after the video. All right, guys. I guess that's everything. I really appreciate everyone for watching. It was definitely a big one. If you guys have any ideas on what our next podcast should be, comment ahead. If you guys have any other questions or anything, you can comment still or send a message to us. And don't forget to follow Amir with his podcast. He has it on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and anywhere else that you can find podcasts at. There it is.
Paperbacks and soundtracks.
There it is. Yeah, all together. But
And what
and
you can do for me is when you see Isaac or Matt, just tell them, hey, we really like that guy Gabriel. You should check that out.
Give him some more
Yeah.
coins. Give him
Yeah.
some more coins.
get us the more coins. Because like, how about every day's double coins for Gabriel? No, but yeah, no. Again, I appreciate you guys. Like I mentioned, I didn't know what you guys were gonna say, and I didn't want to pressure you guys and be like make you guys uncomfortable if you said no and you
I'm
would
just
never
glad it
want.
wasn't a sales ploy, Isaac. He's just using me.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't because you were like I haven't read it and I was like I'm not gonna make you buy it and I'm inviting you but no, but other than that, guys, thank you so much. Do you guys have anything else you need to say,
No,
or
thank you so much.
Matthew?
No.
Thank you for the people that actually stuck all the way to hear our rants in the last 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Watchmen, thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
Come into the store and get more rants.
Okay. All right, guys.